Chapter 3713, Chapter 3713. The ginseng sown back then too. Chapter 3713. The ginseng sown back then too. The silver-masked man rubbed his chin and was lost in his thoughts. The black-robed man prompted him. Tell me, which door do you choose? The silver-haired masked man said. The life door is a possibility. What if she's trying to set us up? What if she went through that door? But she's leaving a trail behind, so that we'll think that she has taken another route. Although this door is marked with the word danger, it feels safer than the two doors on either side. Therefore, it's very likely that she went this way. The death door looks so creepy that no normal person would go in. But what if the girl thinks that we won't pick it and chose it on purpose? So that's possible too. The black-robed man stared at his colleague. Which one should we choose then? The silver-masked man couldn't make up his mind either, and he was frowning. The black-robed man asked, Have you made up your mind? The silver-masked man shook his head. The black-robed man frowned. I don't think we should try to set her up. Even 100 people put together won't be able to do that, and she'll lead us astray. So we should use the dumbest method. The silver-masked man asked, What's that? The black-robed man said, Let's leave it to fate, and we'll choose whichever one it tells us to choose. The silver-masked man asked, What if it's wrong? The black-robed man said, So be it. We'll choose another one after you come out. The silver-masked man thought about it and agreed. By leave it to fate. The black-robed man was referring to the lucky draw. One couldn't tell if he was lucky or not, but he picked out the note that said life. The silver-masked man said, If you choose life, I'll choose danger. If we don't find any trace of that girl, we'll go into the death door together. The black-robed man nodded. Let's do it. After that, they stepped into the door they had chosen. Fengwu stepped on the black portal as soon as she entered the door. When she realized what had happened, she was in a snowfield. The wind was chilly. Fengwu sneezed right away. It was freezing. Where am I? Fengwu cringed. The wind was so cold that it felt like blades on her face. The pain was unbearable. Little Phoenix stuck its head out of Fengwu's arms and looked around curiously. Wait. Little Phoenix looked suspicious. Fengwu asked, What? What's wrong? Little Phoenix scratched its head. This isn't what I remember. I remember this place used to be like spring all year round. The weather was warm, the birds sang, and the flowers smelled nice. Why is it a snowfield now? Fengwu stared at Little Phoenix. Are you sure you remembered it correctly? Maybe we should take the danger or death door instead. Little Phoenix hesitated. Could it be? The look on its face gave Fengwu the creeps. Have we chosen the wrong door? Little Phoenix put on a long face. I can't say. I really don't remember anything. Fengwu said, Weren't you so confident when you told me to go this way just then? Little Phoenix felt a pain in its chest. But after so many years, I don't even recognize this place anymore. Chapter 3714, Chapter 3714. The ginseng sown back then 3. Chapter 3714. The ginseng sown back then 3. However, there's no telling what changes might happen. Look for a way and see if you can find a cave. What kind of cave? Fengwu asked. Little Phoenix said, That mountain is in the shape of a cross. It's very easy to recognize. Take a look. Fengwu wasn't standing very high up yet, and she could see a steep mountain peak ahead of her. She stuffed Little Phoenix into her chest pocket and rubbed her hands. I'll go to the top and have a look. I can see further from there. Little Phoenix was concerned. Are you sure you can do it? Fengwu said, I'm a spiritual lord now. This mountain won't be a problem for me. Little Phoenix felt a little guilty. If I can recover, I won't need you to climb up and down. If you can find the cave, I'm sure I can recover. Fengwu didn't have much hope, but she still comforted Little Phoenix. Don't worry. I'll find that cave for you. Fengwu started climbing with her bare hands. It was already very difficult to climb up this steep slope. To make it worse, it was covered with layers of ice. The snow seemed to have frozen over for thousands of years, and was slippery. Luckily, Fengwu wasn't just any ordinary girl. She had a dagger with her, and when she needed it, she could use it to climb up the mountain. She quickly climbed up the mountain that was thousands of meters high. Standing on a mountain peak, Feng Wu looked into the distance. They were in a snowfield, and there was no cover, so Feng Wu could see very far. A cross-shaped mountain. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and looked around, but she didn't see anything on the first try. Little Phoenix was dumbfounded when it heard the news. No, I can't believe it. What about all the ginseng I planted back then? Have they all gone missing? Little Phoenix pressed a hand to its chest, feeling uneasy. By the look of it, it was worse than taking its life. Feng Wu looked at the bird in resignation. She had to admit that the bird was very good at hiding things. It had done it last time, and it had done it again this time. Her eyes lit up all of a sudden. I see it. There's indeed a mountain in the shape of a cross to the northeast, but the protruding part has been eroded by the wind, and there's only a T left. That was why she didn't notice it at first glance. Little Phoenix was thrilled and told Feng Wu, "Quickly, let's go." Feng Wu knew that anything that could be hidden by the bird had to be good stuff, so she picked up Little Phoenix and ran in that direction. The mountain didn't seem very far in the snowfield, but one wouldn't know how far it was until they started running. It didn't seem to get any closer. When Feng Wu reached the mountain, it was 4 hours later. Little Phoenix said, "Climb. When you're 5,000 meters up, you'll see a protruding rock. I planted a tree there. See if it's still there." Feng Wu followed Little Phoenix's instructions and climbed up. She stopped when she was exactly 5,000 meters up the slope. The protruding rock was long gone, but the cave was still there. Little Phoenix's eyes lit up when it saw the cave. The next second, it jumped out of Feng Wu's arms and disappeared into the cave. Slow down. Slow down. Feng Wu ran after the bird as well. The cave was pitch black at first, so dark that one couldn't see their own fingers. However, it didn't last long. Chapter 37:15, Chapter 37:15, Opportunity 1. Chapter 37:15, Opportunity 1. By Feng Wu's estimation, they had run into the belly of the mountain, and everything suddenly opened up. Wow! Even Feng Wu's eyes lit up when she saw this. They were in an open space in the middle of the mountain. Luminous pearls the size of bowls hung above their heads. Yes, they were indeed the size of bowls. Any one of them could feed a family of hundreds of people for more than a lifetime. How extravagant! Feng Wu also noticed that those hundreds of luminous pearls were arranged in a neat formation, according to the stars in the sky. What surprised her the most wasn't the luminous pearls, but the ground beneath it. There were rows of ginseng in the ground. They had to be the legendary ginseng that Little Phoenix was talking about. There was one every 10 meters, and each one had 6 leaves. The leaves were full and dark green, and they were frighteningly big. Feng Wu often used this kind of snow ginseng when she refined medicine, and she used all the top-grade ingredients. However, she had never seen such a big one before. Little Phoenix was already there. It crouched down next to the first ginseng and pulled it out. The roots were almost 10 meters long. That ginseng was bigger than the biggest white radish Feng Wu had ever seen. It was white and juicy and weighed at least 5 kilograms. Feng Wu was astonished. The ginseng was indeed as amazing as Little Phoenix said. It was almost a spiritual creature. Little Phoenix bit down and tore through the ginseng's skin. It buried its head in and began to suck. Feng Wu could hear the gurgling sound when the bird sucked on the ginseng. The ginseng was drained in no time. Little Phoenix didn't let anything go to waste. With a wave of its sharp claws, the ginseng turned into thin stripes. Little Phoenix stuffed the stripes into its mouth. It only took Little Phoenix a moment to finish the ginseng. Feng Wu was amazed. Little Phoenix was only the size of a fist. After swallowing the ginseng, which was 10 times bigger than it, it didn't feel any discomfort at all. Right now it was going to start on a second one. Feng Wu sensed something in the ring space, as if someone was pounding on the door. Looking down, she saw that it was the cub. Feng Wu could guess what the cub wanted, so she immediately released it from her ring space. After jumping out of the ring space, the cub was even more excited than Little Phoenix. It ran toward the ginseng right away. It did exactly the same thing as Little Phoenix. After pulling out the snow ginseng, it lowered its head and started sucking. Fengwu was intrigued by that slurping sound. After eating the second one, Little Phoenix looked up and saw that Fengwu was still standing there. It said, "Eat." Before Fengwu could ask, Little Phoenix said, "I buried it back then. How many years has it been since then? It's very potent. Eat it. It'll help you recover your cultivation ability." Fengwu was a spiritual elder now. A spiritual elder could be considered a capable cultivator anywhere else, but Fengwu was being chased by two peak spiritual overlords. So, a spiritual elder was nothing. Fengwu wished that she could become a spiritual overlord again. She crouched down, copied Little Phoenix, and began to eat the snow ginseng. One sniff and Fengwu's eyes lit up. It was indeed a rare treasure. Chapter 37:16. Chapter 37:16. Opportunity 2. Chapter 37:16. Opportunity 2. Fengwu only had to take a breath before she felt the heat travel from her throat to her dantian. The blood origin crystal had already provided her dantian with a lot of pure and dense spiritual essence. Now that she had the ginseng, Fengwu felt her dantian burning. "I'm a spiritual lord now." Fengwu was amazed and told Little Phoenix right away. Little Phoenix nodded and went back to eating the ginseng. 1, 2, 3. It was an hour later when Little Phoenix finally looked up from eating the ginseng. By then, the cub had passed out from eating too much snowy ginseng. Fengwu didn't know what to say. Holding its plump belly, Little Phoenix burped. "Finally, I'm full." Fengwu rolled her eyes. "You make it sound like I starve you all the time." Little Phoenix glanced at Fengwu. "They're not as dense as my spiritual ginseng. I planted them myself." Throwing the sleeping cub back into the ring space, Fengwu sat down opposite Little Phoenix and met its gaze. The look on her face suddenly became very serious. "What is this place? How could you grow that ginseng here before?" Little Phoenix said. "Do you want to hear the truth?" Fengwu nodded. Little Phoenix said, "The rumors are only half true. Many people say that this place is the tomb of my master and your beautiful master. But in fact, this is only a fake tomb." Fengwu frowned. "What's that about?" Little Phoenix burped, and its breath smelled like ginseng. It sounded a little drunk when it said, "Too many people in this world have been searching for Master Mu, and they all covet his cultivation technique or simply admire him. That's why when Master Mu went missing, the world was so chaotic that many people fought with each other. That's why Huyan built this place back then. He set up 3 doors, the life, the danger, and the death, so that those people would get in." Fengwu frowned. "You tricked them into coming here just like that." Little Phoenix said, "Well, we didn't exactly trick them. They were so desperate to get in that no one could stop them. All the ancestors of the 4 forces and 9 families have been here before." Fengwu asked, "Where are they now?" Little Phoenix shrugged. "You won't be able to get out once you get in." Fengwu looked perplexed. Little Phoenix nodded. "That's right. Of course, we wouldn't let them go." Fengwu didn't know what to say. Little Phoenix said, "Many masters were trapped in this place back then, and they were from all the major families. I wonder if any of them are still alive. If they are, they can help us defeat those 2 villains." Fengwu asked, "Will they do as you say?" Little Phoenix smiled. "They came here for their cultivation, and no one stopped them from cultivating. If they're still alive, they must be very capable now. Come, let's have a look." Little Phoenix was in high spirits after its meal, so it took Fengwu out with a wave of its wings. "Hey, don't tell them about our relationship with this tomb. Otherwise, those old men may be angry at us," Little Phoenix warned her. Fengwu nodded immediately. She was amazed. She still hadn't digested the information. When they came out of the cave, Fengwu smacked her forehead. "What about the ginseng? What if that black-robed man finds us?" Chapter 37:17. Chapter 37:17. Opportunity 3. Chapter 37:17. Opportunity 3. Little Phoenix realized the problem as well. "How about we pull them all out?" Fengwu's eyes lit up. There's no need to remove them all. We can leave a few left. Little Phoenix was dumbfounded. However, judging by the look on Feng Wu's face, Little Phoenix knew that their pursuer was in trouble. As planned, Feng Wu removed most of the ginseng. They had eaten a lot of it already, so Feng Wu only had a dozen or so left in her storage ring, and there were only 2 more in the ground. As for these 2, Feng Wu had to do something to them. But she had reason to believe that the black-robed man would fall into her trap, even if he found out. As expected, Feng Wu and Little Phoenix saw the man when they went out. Seeing the man's ragged clothes and bloody skin, Feng Wu smiled a little. Feng Wu was soon out of sight, and the man ran after her as fast as he could. Feng Wu, stop right there. The man was pleasantly surprised to see Feng Wu. He had searched high and low for her, but she just so happened to be there. He wouldn't rest until he caught the girl. But before he could catch up with Feng Wu, he saw the snow ginseng. The Dongseng Kingdom had snow ginseng as well, but the man had never seen one with such a dense spiritual essence. It's a great ingredient, the man drooled. But where was Feng Wu? She was out of sight in a split second. The man wanted to catch Feng Wu, but he also wanted the ginseng. He hesitated. Forget it. Feng Wu was in the snowfield, and she wouldn't be able to get away. He was badly injured and poisoned, so he had to use ginseng to treat his wounds. At that thought, the man tried to pull out the ginseng that was the closest to him. Wow! Soon he pulled the ginseng out. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the ginseng that was over 5 kilograms. That's so rare. If I can take it to the Dongseng Kingdom, I'll be promoted right away. Seeing that there were 2 of them, the man decided to eat one and take one back. He moved closer and sucked all the juice of the ginseng into his mouth. That taste! Why did it have a special fragrance? But the man didn't care. He thought that the nearly spiritual snow ginseng probably tasted like this. He tore the shriveled trunk of the ginseng into pieces, chewed on it and swallowed it. He even washed the roots clean before swallowing them whole. He didn't want to leave anything behind. As for the other one, needless to say, he wouldn't let it stay in the ground. He took off his robe, dug out the ginseng, and carefully wrapped the robe around the 10-meter-long root before tying it to his back. These 2 ginseng alone would make the trip worthwhile. Feng Wu, where do you think you're going? After that, he turned his attention to Feng Wu again. You're bound to leave a mark on this vast snowfield. Do you think you can get away? TSK. The man smirked. The next second he set out. No one knew how he found his way, but he was right. It was indeed the way Feng Wu left. If Feng Wu were here, she would be very surprised. How did the man know that she was going this way? Chapter 37:18, Chapter 37:18. Too dangerous one. Chapter 37:18. Too dangerous one. Little Phoenix knew this place like the back of its hand. Therefore, it led Feng Wu through the snowfield after it recovered its strength. Little Phoenix said, I remember clearly that many old masters used to live here. Feng Wu asked curiously, why are they living here? Little Phoenix said proudly, of course, it's because of the traces left behind by my master, and some incomplete manuals. As a result, they all came here like flies smelling meat. Feng Wu asked, won't they leave after they come in? Little Phoenix gave Feng Wu a strange look. Leave? Feng Wu said, that's right. Won't they leave? Little Phoenix smiled again. To do that, they have to know how to leave. Seeing Feng Wu's confusion, Little Phoenix was even more pleased. Little Yamba and I built this place together. I was in charge of the drawings, and he took care of the construction. They can't just walk away from the place we built together. Humph. Little Yamba? He was the most capable man in northern Yen, but Little Phoenix had just called him Little Yamba. Soon they reached a mountain peak. The mountain peak wasn't very tall. It was round and plump, and the top of the mountain was bare. There was no greenery, and the ground was covered with white snow. Little Phoenix's eyes lit up. It's right here. Feng Wu didn't see any path. Little Phoenix told Feng Wu, climb. When you loom up the slope, you'll find a protruding stone with the pattern of a bird on it. Feng Wu nodded. She knew that little Phoenix was a living navigator here, and she would do whatever it said. Just then, Feng Wu heard a gust of wind behind her. Feng Wu's pupils contracted when she turned around. The man in the black robe. WHV was he so fast? They were only a few kilometers apart. With the man's speed, he would catch up with them in no time. Run! Little Phoenix cried out, and its voice wasn't as calm as before. The difference between Feng Wu and her opponent was simply too great. Even at her peak, Feng Wu was only a level 3 spiritual overlord. However, the man was at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage, and was very close to the spiritual saint stage. Of course, Feng Wu knew that her top priority was to run as fast as she could. She didn't know if she could get away. Following Little Phoenix's instructions, Feng Wu quickly reached the loom mark, and began to search for a safe route. But she couldn't find it. Feng Wu circled around and searched for it, but she still couldn't find it. The man was closing in. Although he was injured and poisoned, he still looked terrifyingly powerful. Feng Wu didn't panic. Instead, she calmed down. 1000 m, 500 m, 300 m. The man was almost there. Frustrated, Little Phoenix ran around in circles on Feng Wu's head. It's right here. It's within 100 meters. I made a mark on it. 10W. Can it not be there? Feng Wu smacked her head all of a sudden. We're on ice, and it's very likely that the ground is way beneath us. That stone was loom above the ground before, but it may not be the case now. Feng Wu thought of that possibility, but it was too late. Because in a split second, the black-robed man was at the foot of the mountain. Looking up, he saw that Feng Wu was only 100 meters away. The man smirked and let out a breath of relief. Chapter 37:19 Chapter 37:19 Too Dangerous, 2. Chapter 37:19 Too Dangerous, 2. The man smirked. After all the chasing, he finally caught up with her. However, he didn't let his guard down in the last loom. After all, he had been tricked by Feng Wu before. Therefore, he was on guard. Explode! He was about to charge out when Feng Wu threw something at him. The man was already alarmed, so he dodged to the side. Wait, why didn't it explode? The man turned around and saw the thing rolling down the cliff, but it didn't explode. It was a lump of snow. The man was furious. She was indeed a cunning girl. The man smirked inwardly and kept climbing. The ground was covered by loose snow, and it would take an ordinary person some time to climb up. However, the man could easily cover a distance of loom. The next second, Feng Wu threw something down again. Die! Feng Wu shouted again. The man had been tricked once by Feng Wu, and decided that he wouldn't be fooled this time. Instead, he charged at her. But this time, it still looked like a snowball, but there was a bomb inside. Not only that, but it was also a very fancy bomb. There was a loud bang, and the snowball exploded in front of the man. The explosion was unprecedentedly bright. Involuntarily, he covered his eyes with his right hand to prevent them from getting hurt. To his astonishment, the next second, the snow on the slope began to fall. The man was indeed very capable, but he wasn't powerful enough to defy gravity, so he began to fall with the snow. They were only 100 meters apart. The girl was still resisting. The man smirked. Kiddo, do you think that trick will work? Feng Wu ignored him, but she was fiddling with something. She was very busy. The man smirked. How petty. After that, the man charged at her again. He hadn't exerted his full power just then, but this time, he was going to make her. However, before he could exert his full power, he heard the sound of an avalanche. The man cursed inwardly. Why did it have to happen now? And it just had to be in his position. Looking up at Feng Wu, the man saw snow rolling down the mountain peak toward her like tidal waves. I can't let her get buried. That was the man's first thought. The girl was so scheming that she would never be buried alive. Hence, he rushed over and tried to grab Feng Wu. At that critical moment, Little Phoenix growled. Now! The man watched as Feng Wu charged out at the last moment, and the bird picked her up with its beak. The tons of snow swept toward him like a tidal wave. He had used all his power to reach Feng Wu, so when the avalanche caught him, he was unable to escape. Damn it! The man finally realized that Feng Wu had set him up. The girl had deliberately given her weakness away so that he could grab her. But as it turned out, she had tricked him. Damn it! The man was furious. She had tricked him over and over again. Chapter 37:20, Chapter 37:20, Too Dangerous 3. Chapter 37:20, Too Dangerous 3. Infuriated, the man struck down Feng Wu. Little Phoenix hadn't carried Feng Wu far yet. The man could have used his spiritual essence on himself, so that he wouldn't get hurt, but he didn't. He struck Feng Wu from behind. Sensing the danger, Little Phoenix fell to the ground. Even so, Feng Wu was still severely injured. Feng Wu spat out a mouthful of blood. Little Phoenix asked anxiously, "Are you all right?" Cough, cough. Feng Wu coughed and couldn't utter a word. The avalanche had devoured the man, and was coming at Feng Wu and Little Phoenix. Little Phoenix knew that the avalanche would only stop the man for a while, so it and Feng Wu had to make sure that they were buried inside. "Let's go." Little Phoenix opened its mouth, picked Feng Wu up, and flew a few kilometers away. But an avalanche didn't happen in just one place. There was a chain reaction. It had spread to other snowfields in the surrounding area. Little Phoenix was exhausted. It looked back in the direction it came from. The man had been completely buried. However, the road leading to those capable cultivators had been buried as well, and they couldn't get in to ask for help even if they wanted to. Infuriated, Little Phoenix shouted, "That man is abominable!" The avalanche hadn't ended yet. The snow was moving up and down, as if it was going to devour everything. Little Phoenix panicked, and was scared out of its wits. Before Feng Wu hit the ground, Little Phoenix swooped down, picked her up, and flew into the sky. It had been hit by the man's last strike as well, and was in pain all over. Luckily, it had swallowed a lot of snow ginseng earlier, and the medicine was quickly taking effect, repairing its body. Little Phoenix carried Feng Wu all the way out of the snowfield, until they reached a dense forest. Exhausted, Little Phoenix couldn't take it anymore. It fell to the ground and fainted. Feng Wu had been unconscious to begin with. Her head was bleeding from the impact, but it didn't wake her up either. No one knew how much time had passed after that. The hot sunlight slowly woke Feng Wu up. Involuntarily, she covered her eyes with her hands, and it took her a while to open them again. She then saw an old tree. Where was this place? Feng Wu sat up involuntarily, but the pain made her grunt. That hurt. It wasn't just her chest, but her back as well. Feng Wu recalled what happened before she fainted. Back then, she had tricked the man, but the angry man had also hit her from behind. She was on the verge of collapsing, and there was an avalanche. Little Phoenix had carried her all the way. Where was Little Phoenix? Looking around, Feng Wu soon saw a meter-long colorful bird lying on its back. It was very quiet, and didn't seem to be breathing. Feng Wu immediately went up to Little Phoenix and checked its breathing. Luckily, it was breathing, but there was little sign of life. Wake up, wake up. Feng Wu poured some semi-divine potion into Little Phoenix's mouth. Little Phoenix slowly opened its eyes when it heard Feng Wu's voice. It was relieved to see her. With that, it relaxed and fainted for good. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Chapter 37:21, Chapter 37:21, Too Dangerous 4. Chapter 37:21, Too Dangerous 4. Luckily, its life wasn't in danger. Putting Little Phoenix back into her ring space, Feng Wu rose to her feet and looked around. She could sense something. Someone was watching her with a dangerous look in their eyes. Feng Wu wasn't doing well at the moment. She had severe internal injuries and couldn't withstand any more blows. However, her life was in danger, and she had no other choice. The intimidating feeling grew stronger. Feng Wu gripped her fallen star sword. Whoosh! All of a sudden, someone charged at her. It was too fast for Feng Wu to react. Feng Wu had been prepared for this, and dodged to the side. When she looked again, she finally saw what it was. It was indeed a big guy. Feng Wu recognized it right away. It was a fire-cloud white lion. The lion was at least a peak spiritual lord. Feng Wu almost had a heart attack. She had recovered to the spiritual lord stage, but the man had injured her, and she could only exert the power of a spiritual elder now. She wasn't the lion's match. What a pity. If little Phoenix had been here, it would have been able to intimidate the lion. Unfortunately, it was too severely injured and had passed out. Before, Feng Wu could have killed the lion with one strike, but now, it was the other way around. The lion stared at Feng Wu with a resolute look in its eyes, which was filled with murderous intention. It wanted to kill her. Feng Wu could sense that the lion was going to kill her. If she couldn't defeat the lion, she would have to outsmart it. Feng Wu stared into the lion's eyes. She wasn't intimidated at all. Instead, she was filled with a fighting spirit. Because if she gave in, she would be dead for sure. Feng Wu quickly scanned the lion from the corner of her eye. Wait, she saw a streak of red on the side of the lion. It was blood. The lion was injured. Feng Wu shook her head inwardly. The lion wasn't injured. It wasn't his blood. Could that blood be the result of the lion devouring its prey? Feng Wu rejected that idea again. If the blood came from its prey, the blood should be on the corner of its mouth, or its front paws. It was very unlikely that there was blood on its sides. So it was very likely. Is your friend injured? Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and stared at the lion. Are they badly injured and dying? The lion was going to kill the human prey, but it was surprised by Feng Wu's words. Feng Wu was only trying to sound it out. After that, she kept her gaze on the lion, trying to see the look on its face. As expected, the look on the lion's face changed a little. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. I see that your wife is the one who's injured. As a majestic male lion, it wouldn't stay with other male lions. The only one that could live with it was probably a female lion. The lion kept its cold gaze on Feng Wu without saying a word. Feng Wu said, You should know that here are great human doctors, and I'm one of the best in the human race. I can help you. The lion eyed Feng Wu suspiciously. Seeing that it wouldn't believe her, Feng Wu raised her right hand, and a streak of green light flew toward the lion. Chapter 37:22. Chapter 37:22 Midwife. Chapter 37:22 Midwife. The lion stared at Feng Wu with an indecipherable look in its eyes. Feng Wu stared back at it. I'm the only one who can save your kin. Otherwise it's going to die. I have some food if you're short of it. With a wave of her hand, a pile of fresh food rolled out of her ring space. They were chunks of fresh beef. Together, they weighed hundreds of kilograms. The lion looked from Feng Wu to the beef on the ground and nodded at her. It also told Feng Wu to put away the food and take it out when they got there. Feng Wu knew perfectly well that the avalanche wouldn't bury the man for long, so she had to leave as soon as possible. She followed the lion into a dry cave. When they got there, Feng Wu saw another lion lying in the cave. It was covered in blood, and there was a lot of blood on the ground as well. Feng Wu went up to the female lion in a hurry. One look and she knew what it was. It's not just an injury. It's difficult labor. Feng Wu looked at the lion. She's pregnant, and the cub's legs are facing out. That's why she can't give birth. The male lion ran around in circles and bellowed at Feng Wu. Feng Wu said, Has she been injured before? Did she roll off a snow mountain? The lion nodded. Feng Wu said, Luckily you ran into me. Otherwise you would have lost 2 lives. No, 4 because she's pregnant with 3 cubs. This was the first time that the male lion had heard of that, and it was baffling. Feng Wu said affirmatively, Be careful when you're pregnant with 3 cubs. You're all so careless. Feng Wu put her hand on the female lion's belly. Emerald spiritual essence flowed out of her fingertips and jumped around. The lion was barely breathing after the blood loss, but it soon regained some of its vitality. But it was still on guard. Animals were instinctively on guard against humans. Feng Wu comforted it. Don't worry. I don't need to cut you open to take the cub out. We'll go with the flow. Feng Wu turned the first cub around, so that its head was facing the exit. Only then did she tell the female lion, Save your strength and give birth to it in one go. 1, 2, 3. The female lion could understand what Feng Wu meant. She didn't trust humans at first, but there was something soft in Feng Wu's eyes that made her trust her. Just then the first cub came out. Feng Wu let out a breath of relief. She had never given birth to a magical beast before, and had to work as if she was delivering human babies. Feng Wu gave the cub to the mother lion. The lion burst into tears when it saw the cub. Feng Wu said, "Keep up the good work. There are 2 more." As she spoke, she took out a recovered D0 tian and fed it to the lion. The lion no longer looked at with caution and trusted her a lot. Before long, the second and third cubs came out, and both were very healthy. Feng Wu stuffed the 3 cubs between the lion's forelegs and rose to her feet. The male lion looked at her uneasily and was about to say something when Feng Wu waved at it. "She's no longer in danger, and that's all I can do. If someone asks you about it, don't tell them that you've met me. Otherwise they'll kill you." Chapter 37:23. Chapter 37:23. Contingency. Chapter 37:23. Contingency. Feng Wu turned to leave the cave after that. Something then occurred to her, and she asked the lion, "Where were you injured?" The lion was very grateful for Feng Wu's help, so it led the way. Feng Wu followed the lion to a cliff. She looked around, and her eyes lit up. She said to the lion, "You can go back now. You should keep the cave safe." The lion suddenly bent its front legs and knelt down in front of Feng Wu. It then turned to leave. Magical beasts can be more grateful than humans sometimes. Feng Wu sighed inwardly. "You've been staring at this mountain. Do you have a plan?" Little Phoenix came out of Feng Wu's sleeve. Feng Wu glanced at it. "Have you rested enough?" Little Phoenix nodded at Feng Wu. "I'll be fine for now." Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu up and down. "I see that you're going to set someone up again." Feng Wu chuckled. Little Phoenix had to hand it to Feng Wu. She was still in the mood to trick other people. "We'll have a much better chance if we run now," Little Phoenix reminded Feng Wu. Feng Wu shook her head. "That man has to die. Otherwise, I'll never be able to get away from him." Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. "Are you saying that he?" Feng Wu nodded solemnly. "I suspect that he has a special way to track me. No matter where I go, he'll catch up with me. So if he's not dead, we won't be able to get away." Little Phoenix sighed. Before, the bird wouldn't have to be afraid of that man at all. One strike and the man would be dead. But now, Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu. "How confident are you?" Feng Wu said seriously. "I wasn't sure at first, but after seeing the terrain here, I think I have a 20% chance." 20%? That's too little. Little Phoenix objected. Feng Wu said, "That lioness fell down from here, but it's not dead. Let's go have a look. Maybe there's a surprise in the terrain down there." After falling for a few hundred meters, Feng Wu saw a protruding stone platform. It was at least 5 meters wide and thick. It was stained with the lion's blood. Looking around raised her eyebrows a little. She was 20% more confident now. Before long, Feng Wu looked around and told Little Phoenix, "I'm 60% confident now. I have to give it a go. I can't keep running like this." Seeing that Feng Wu wouldn't give up, Little Phoenix said in resignation, "We'll give it a go, but we still have to run. Don't forget that my master's life depends on you." Feng Wu patted her chest. "Don't worry. I cherish my life more than you think." Before the black-robed man arrived, Feng Wu started working on the formation. She knew better than anyone else that the man in black would catch up with her. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because of the good location, Feng Wu had made more than 5 backup plans. All the poisons, bombs, and other resources she had accumulated in her ring space were used up this time. She hoped that with all the arrangements, she would be able to trap the man for good. Chapter 37:24. Chapter 37:24. Caught up again. Chapter 37:24. Caught up again. As soon as Feng Wu made the last preparations, a gust of wind blew, and the black-robed man appeared in front of her. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Feng Wu was right in front of the man, and behind her was an abyss. The atmosphere suddenly became very tense. If the man stepped forward and gave Feng Wu a little push, Feng Wu would fall into the abyss and disappear forever. It was obvious that the man thought the same. He grinned maliciously and took a step forward. Feng Wu feigned a panicked tone. "Stop right there. Don't come any closer." The man smirked at Feng Wu's reaction. "You didn't see it coming, did you?" The man laughed. Feng Wu glared at her. "Stop right there." The man took another step forward and smirked at Feng Wu. "Didn't you say you were going to run? Run." Feng Wu didn't know what to say. The man said, "But you're really good at running. You found the underground river and accidentally entered the tomb. I didn't expect you to get this far." Because Feng Wu was right here, the man wanted to tell her everything. Feng Wu had been giving him a hard time. Feng Wu said, "I." She stepped back, and a gust of wind blew at her from behind. Her clothes flapped in the wind, as if she was going to fall off the cliff at any moment. Her face was ghastly pale, and she looked like she had lost all hope and didn't know what to do. The man noticed that although the girl still looked stubborn, she had clenched her fists so tight that her knuckles had turned white. "So you're scared now?" He stared at the girl, who was only a meter away from him. Feng Wu raised her head. "I'm not afraid." The smirk on the man's face grew more obvious. "If you're not afraid, why are you trembling?" Feng Wu didn't know what to say. The man sighed. "Why are you so stupid? If you hadn't run away, I could have brought you back to the Dongsang Kingdom and handed you to Mr. Sakia. No matter what happens after that, you'll still be alive. You shouldn't have tried to run away. You've given us a lot of trouble." "I'm alright, but I still have a superior. He'll be mad at me." "Do you know how much manpower the Dongsang Kingdom has mobilized to catch you? You have no idea. I would love to take you back alive, but you're so slippery. Even if I knock you out and carry you back, I'm worried that you'll wake up earlier and poison me on our way back." There was a ferocious look on the man's face. "You're a poisonous girl. You're so good at poisoning people. If I hadn't reached the peak of the spiritual overlord stage, I would have been killed by now." The man glared at Feng Wu. "Even if I'm a peak spiritual overlord, you've still poisoned me to the point that I only have half of my power. How vicious can you be? I can't let you live." The man took another step forward. Feng Wu took a deep breath. "I'm more useful alive than dead. Won't you consider that?" The man smirked. "You'll be more obedient to me when you're dead. Die." Feng Wu said. "In that case." After that she fell backward. It was like bungee jumping. Chapter 37:25. Chapter 37:25. The Poisonous Girl. Chapter 37:25. The Poisonous Girl. The man paled. Feng Wu was falling into the abyss. The order was very clear. He had to bring her back, dead or alive. The man needed Feng Wu's dead body to make up for his mistake. He wouldn't let her fall. Hence, he reached out involuntarily to grab Feng Wu. But he couldn't catch her. All he could catch was the lower hem of her clothes. And the cloth. It was poisonous. Arg! The man wanted to scream. Caught off guard, he was stabbed in the palm. There wasn't much blood, but her poison would seep into the wound. Moreover, the cliff was so close that the man could fall into it if he wasn't careful. The man watched as Feng Wu fell. Unable to catch her, he was about to jump in to find her body, but the next moment, there was a loud bang. The ground under the man's feet shattered. Some unknown liquid splashed onto the man's legs. The man cursed inwardly. What a vicious girl. She still had that trick up her sleeves. Half of the cliff had been blown up, and the man had nowhere to stand, so he couldn't stop the fall. As for the thing that had splashed on his feet, the man didn't feel any discomfort, so he ignored it for the time being. How many toxins had the girl thrown out along the way? She probably didn't have anything lethal left. She was probably just trying to scare him. The falling man didn't think much of the slime on his feet. The ground below was covered by thick fog, and visibility was very poor. The man didn't notice Feng Wu. Had the girl fallen to the ground and died? However, he couldn't care less about Feng Wu now, for he wasn't doing well either. Both sides of the cliff were covered by loose snow, and the man couldn't stop himself even if he wanted to. He kept falling. However, the man was able to withstand the fall. He dug his fingers into the cliff to steady himself. But why did the snow feel different? The man's eyes lit up before he had time to think. He saw a protruding stone platform a few hundred meters below. Although it was covered by a thick fog, he couldn't be mistaken. He quickly landed on the stone platform. However, as soon as he set foot on the stone platform, something stuck to his feet. He wanted to lift his foot but couldn't. He then remembered something. He didn't care about the slime on his feet before, but now something was wrong. His feet were stuck to the stone platform, and he couldn't move a muscle. The man wanted to take off his boots. However, he would have been fine if he had taken off his boots from the very beginning, but the slime had seeped into the soles of his feet and glued them together. He couldn't separate his feet from his boots, so of course he couldn't take them off. That wasn't all. Feng Wu had designed a series of traps, and of course, she wouldn't give the man any break. Whoosh! A storm of needles struck down at the man. The man was furious. Feng Wu was such a poisonous girl. Damn it! Chapter 3726. Chapter 3726. Feng Wu's Tricks. Chapter 3726. Feng Wu's Tricks. What a poisonous girl. The man bellowed inwardly. He thought he had overestimated the girl, but as it turned out, she hadn't started yet. The man stood there, looking like a sitting duck. Countless needles poured down at his head from the tree on the left and the cliff on the right. The black-robed man's defensive shield had been worn down by Feng Wu's poison over and over again, and there was only a thin layer left. It wasn't something that could be recovered instantly. As a result, the needles that shouldn't have been able to injure him began to sting him like a death warrant. He could handle most of the needles, but what if a venomous snake jumped out of nowhere? No one knew where Feng Wu found the hibernating snake, but judging by its sharp fangs, it was very venomous. The thin snake crawled into the man's trousers and slithered all the way up. The man was indeed a capable cultivator, but no matter how capable he was, Feng Wu had worn him out on their way here. Moreover, he had been immobilized and was surrounded by needles. He was overwhelmed. Hence, the snake moved all the way up until it found the man's softest part. The man stiffened. What was that? He was only distracted for a moment before he was pricked in the face by several needles. Luckily, they didn't go into his eyes. When he reached for his softest part, he felt a sharp pain. Arg! The man screamed in pain. This was the saddest battle the man had ever fought with Feng Wu, because he realized that he had been bitten by a venomous snake in his private part. Although he had caught the snake and crushed it to death, the wound wouldn't disappear. He felt a numbing sensation in his groin. It was painful and itchy at the same time, and he felt awful. Was he poisoned? The man wanted to throw up. Just then an arrow flew at him. An arrow's. Where did that arrow come from? Looking up, he saw a red figure shooting arrows at him from a cliff in the distance. That slender figure in red. The man found it rather familiar, and almost blurted out a name. But he refused to believe it, because he would look like a fool if he did. That arrow had distracted him. That was why he had been bitten by that venomous snake. Just then more arrows came at him again. 3 shots in a row. The man thought his lungs were going to explode. It was her. It was Feng Wu. She really wasn't dead. Not only wasn't she dead, but she had also set up so many traps for him, which he had foolishly jumped into. Recalling what he said to Feng Wu, the man felt utterly foolish. Arg! The man flew into a rage out of humiliation. What he didn't notice was that when he lost his temper, countless ants had climbed onto his back. When he realized what had happened, he was covered in ants. Chapter 3727. Chapter 3727. Feng Wu's Tricks 2. Chapter 3727. Feng Wu's Tricks 2. There were so many cuts on his body, and ants loved the smell he gave off. It was Feng Wu. It was her doing again. Did she think these ants could hurt him? That was ridiculous. With a wave of his hand, the black-robed man sent a streak of green flame out of his body. Immediately, The ants that had climbed onto him were reduced to ashes. They were all dead. The man smirked. What a petty trick. However, as soon as he said that, he realized that his wounds were itchy. It was getting more and more itchy. Even with his willpower, he could barely control it. He immediately took off his robe. One look, and he felt a chill run down his spine. The wounds on his body began to turn red and swollen, and pus was seeping out. That wasn't all. If the wounds were his only problem, he could always cut into his own flesh to treat his wounds. But, since when did his body turn blue? It was so itchy. The man was so frustrated that he felt itchy all over. As powerful as he was, he couldn't stop the sensation. Although he didn't know how Feng Wu was able to get back to the cliff after falling, he had decided to fly back up. Moreover, with his capability, he could easily fly back up the cliff. However, when he stomped his foot and was about to fly up, he suddenly remembered. No, his boots were stuck to the ground, and he couldn't fly. The man was furious. With a sudden movement, he directed his spiritual essence toward the stone platform beneath him. He wanted to take the stone platform up with him. Under normal circumstances, he could do it because he was a peak spiritual overlord. But now, he was dragged down by a force. Looking down, he saw that a lot of iron had been tied to the stone platform. The iron block dragged him down the cliff, and he couldn't keep his balance in midair. For right now, the man's feet were stuck to the stone platform, and he was falling down with it, as if he was riding on clouds. This time he really panicked. Whoosh! Another arrow flew at him. Only then did he notice that one of Feng Wu's feet had been tied to a rope. In a split second he figured it out. He had thought that Feng Wu had fallen off the cliff, but that wasn't the case. Feng Wu's leg was held by that rope, which stopped her from the fall. She could then climb up like a little monkey with the help of the rope. He, on the other hand, had been completely fooled by Feng Wu. The man gritted his teeth and stared at Feng Wu. He was so angry that he couldn't think straight. Wait! The man smacked his head. How could he have forgotten? Since he was able to remove the stone platform from the cliff, he should be able to break it as well. Without the falling stone and the giant chunk of iron under it, he would be able to get back up on his own. What happened was quicker than words could describe. The black-robed activated his spiritual essence. Explode! Having been tricked by Feng Wu for so long, the man had less than 30% of his capability left, but he was still a capable cultivator. Hence he cracked the stone. However, Feng Wu had anticipated that as well. When the man used his spiritual essence to blow up the stone, white smoke rose from it. Chapter 37:28. Chapter 37:28. Feng Wu's Tricks 3. Chapter 37:28. Feng Wu's Tricks 3. Envy. The man was surrounded by white smoke. He panicked. What was that? Was the white mist poisonous? Because Feng Wu had tricked him so many times, he could only hold his breath and didn't dare to activate his spiritual essence. Because once it was activated, the toxin would circulate in his system at an even faster speed. Without activating his spiritual essence, he had no choice but to fall. He spotted a suspension bridge a short distance away. All he needed to do was stand on it, and he would be safe for a while. The man hated Feng Wu more than words could describe. He made a mental note that as soon as he could find his footing, he would take his revenge on Feng Wu. He wouldn't give Feng Wu any chance. The man stood on the suspension bridge in expectation, but he didn't even have time to heave a sigh of relief. Sizzle! An unknown electric current came from one end of the suspension bridge. The man was electrocuted before he had time to react. The electric current was so strong that there were sparks everywhere. The man stiffened and was dumbfounded. What was going on? What on earth was going on? His first reaction was that the suspension bridge had been tampered with as well. He was right, but Feng Wu didn't have time to test it. She didn't expect the electric current to be so strong. Feng Wu was elated when she saw the man's face turn black. She hoped it would work this time. However, the man was at the peak of the spiritual overlord stage, and Feng Wu was indeed much weaker than him. Therefore, she had underestimated him. In a moment of life and death, the man broke his own leg. Yes, he had shattered his leg from the knee down. He finally rolled off the suspension bridge and fell all the way down. He wouldn't survive if he was stuck on the suspension bridge. He would be electrocuted to death. Maybe he still had a chance now. The man thought. After everything she's done, she must have run out of tricks. Seeing the relieved look on the man's face, Feng Wu smiled. Running out of tricks? Not necessarily. Just then, Feng Wu saw the man fall toward an old tree. The tree was hundreds of meters tall, and 10 people could wrap their arms around it. Seeing the old tree, the man tried his best to move in its direction. The tree could offset most of the falling momentum, so that he wouldn't be so badly injured. But it had never occurred to him that Feng Wu would have more tricks up her sleeves. She could do more. Black mist scattered when the man fell into the old tree. The man was too dizzy to notice the black mist, but soon, he heard a buzzing sound. What was that? He opened his eyes with much difficulty and looked around. One look, and he was filled with despair. The buzzing sound came from the big black wasps. There were tens of thousands of them, and they were all staring at the man. The man felt something sticky behind him. When he touched it, he saw that it was a yellow hive that he had destroyed, as well as a wasp queen. The man looked terrified. Chapter 3729. Chapter 3729. Feng Wu LS Tricks 4. Chapter 3729. Feng Wu LS Tricks 4. As a peak spiritual overlord, he shouldn't be afraid of the big black wasps at all, but now, he was covered with cuts and bruises, and his internal injuries were severe. Both his legs were broken at the knees, and he was drained of spiritual essence. He had suppressed the toxin in his body, but now, he had stirred up a wasp's nest. The man wanted to run, but he had lost his legs. How was he supposed to run? Buzz! The wasps were furious. Their only queen was crushed just like that. Tens of thousands of wasps charged at the man. Feng Wu was quickly climbing down with the help of the rope. When she reached the bottom, she saw the man being attacked by the big black wasps. The man was frustrated. He was a peak spiritual overlord. The wasps were very poisonous, and they all stuck their stingers into the man. While the big black wasps were poisoning the man, the toxin in him exploded as well. Therefore, the man killed the big black wasps in an instant, leaving only cold stingers in his body. The rest of the wasps fell to the ground and died. Soon, the ground was covered with dead big black wasps. They were half the height of a grown man. The look gave Feng Wu the creeps, so she turned to look at the man. The man was in a miserable state. He was hanging from the tree at first, but he had already fallen to the ground. His face was dark, and his skin was as black as ink. He was covered with cuts and bruises, and his legs were missing from his knees down. Even the blood that was oozing out was black. The toxin was so potent. When Feng Wu stood there, the man slowly opened his eyes. The moment he saw Feng Wu, he was furious. "You!" The man coughed violently and spat out blood. Feng Wu knew that it was because the man had run out of spiritual essence and couldn't suppress the toxin anymore. "You deserve to die." The man stared at Feng Wu, spat out a mouthful of blood, and closed his eyes. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She took a few steps forward, and stopped when she was a few meters away from the man. "Wait, is that man really dead?" Rubbing her chin, Feng Wu asked in bewilderment. The man lay there motionless. Feng Wu didn't go any closer. Instead, she walked around the man and murmured, "Is he really dead? Since you're already dead, I'll burn your body for you. It'll save you from getting exposed." Feng Wu got to work right away. Orange flames came out of her fingertips and landed on the man. The man still didn't move. Behind the man were big black wasps, which were easy to set on fire. The flames immediately surrounded the man. Right at that moment, the dead man jumped into the air and charged at Feng Wu. "Then let's die together." He could no longer see, but he could still sense where Feng Wu was. What he didn't know was that Feng Wu already knew that he was faking it. Everyone had terminal lucidity, and Feng Wu wasn't going to test how a peak spiritual overlord would react. She had long hidden herself. Chapter 3730, Chapter 3730. He finally dead 1. Chapter 3730. He finally dead 1. When the man charged at her, Feng Wu stuffed a log she had prepared into his arms. The man only had one chance. He thought that he had caught Feng Wu, so he punched the object coming at him. There was a loud thump. The log was pulverized. The man used his only chance. He swayed and fell to the ground. There was a loud thump. The impact created a human-shaped pit in the ground, and he was completely submerged. Only then did Feng Wu walk out from behind a big tree and slowly walk up to the man. Lying in the pit, the man stared at Feng Wu but couldn't utter a word. Feng Wu noticed that he was shaking from head to toe, and his lips were trembling as if he wanted to say something. Feng Wu crouched down next to him and sighed. "Why did you have to come after me? Why did you come all the way from the Dongseng Kingdom, just to die thousands of kilometers away from home? You're a peak spiritual overlord. Aren't you ashamed to be killed by me?" The man spat out the last mouthful of black blood and stared at Feng Wu. "Do you think the Dongseng Kingdom is the only one after you? Ha ha ha." He was finally dead after that. With a wave of Feng Wu's hand, a streak of flame landed on the man, which immediately engulfed him. Just then Little Phoenix cried out, "Let's go." Before Feng Wu could ask, Little Phoenix said anxiously, "There's another person after you. He has broken through the death door. Run." The silver-masked man. Feng Wu's stomach lurched. "He's not dead." Little Phoenix nodded. "Not only that, but I also feel that he's even more powerful than before." Feng Wu was astonished. Little Phoenix urged her again. "Let's go." Feng Wu asked where. Little Phoenix said, "I know a secret passageway that leads to the Northern Yen Kingdom, and another one to the Junwa Empire. Which one do you want to go?" Feng Wu couldn't help but recall what the man said at the end. "People of the Dongseng Kingdom aren't the only ones after you. So who else was after her?" Feng Wu recalled the families she had offended. Was it possible? Feng Wu said, "We're going to Northern Yen." This time, Feng Wu decided to blend in until she met up with Jun Linyuan at the Northern Yen Palace. "Let's go to Northern Yen then," Little Phoenix agreed. "Little Yamba has the final say. As long as we get in touch with him, no matter who comes, we'll kill them all." Feng Wu cleared her throat. Meeting up with Jun Linyuan will have the same effect. But Jun Linyuan was so elusive now that she didn't know where to find him. "That person is here." Little Phoenix reminded Feng Wu. "Let's go west." Little Phoenix gave the hall a regretful look. There were a lot of good stuff here, but Feng Wu was still too weak. It would wait until she was stronger. Little Phoenix took Feng Wu to the west. As soon as they disappeared into the woods, someone showed up. Little Phoenix was right. It was indeed the silver-masked man. He saw a body on fire, which made him think that it was Feng Wu. He quickly went up to the spot. Chapter 3731. Chapter 3731. He's finally dead too. Chapter 3731. He's finally dead too. What he saw astonished him. It wasn't Feng Wu's body but Blackie. With a wave of his hand, the silver-masked man doused the fire with a streak of rainwater. He rushed over and pulled the body out. It was indeed Blackie. When he checked the man's breathing, he realized that the latter was no longer breathing, and there was no pulse either. The man was long dead, and most of his body had been burnt to a crisp. The silver-masked man's face twisted, and there was a cold look in his eyes. Feng Wu. It had to be her. He looked around, but Feng Wu was nowhere to be found. After killing Blackie, she was able to get away without leaving a trace. How could someone as weak as her do that? The silver-masked man wouldn't believe it. He began to examine his surroundings. He kept searching until he reached the edge of the cliff. Looking down the cliff, he deduced what the black-robed man had gone through. The silver-masked man took a deep breath. "Mr. Sakiya, you told me to be on guard against that girl, but you didn't tell me how evil she could be." A chill ran down his spine. A girl so much weaker than Blackie had slowly killed him. The silver-masked man took a deep breath. It seemed that his judgment of the girl had to change again. If she could slowly kill Blackie, she could probably do the same to him. Once the silver-masked man calmed down, he began to examine Feng Wu's footprints. She had to leave a trace behind. But Little Phoenix had taken Feng Wu away, so there were no footprints, which frustrated the man. His eyes lit up all of a sudden. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had flown out of the hall, led by Little Phoenix. According to Little Phoenix, the silver-masked man couldn't take anything away from this place. Even if he could, Huyin Yamba would kill him later. Little Phoenix kept urging Feng Wu, "We'll be fine when we get to Northern Yan. Let's go." Under Little Phoenix's instruction, Feng Wu quietly left the tomb hall. When Feng Wu came out of the water, she found herself in the middle of a wide river. The river bank was dozens of meters to her left. Before Feng Wu could reach the shore, she heard a cry for help a short distance away. "Help! Help us!" Looking up, Feng Wu saw a dying boy pressing down on the girl behind him, while he craned his neck upward. Feng Wu knew perfectly well that the boy had lost all his senses and reason. All he could do now was struggle, as if he was grasping at straws. The boy was only 5 or 6 years old, and the girl was only in her teens. Right now, the little girl was being held down by the boy's struggle, and she couldn't breathe. She couldn't hold on much longer. Feng Wu went up to them and lifted them out of the water. Instinctively, they struggled with all their strength, but Feng Wu was able to pull them ashore. Once they were ashore, Feng Wu saw a group of people running toward them, one of them holding a little boy. Chapter 37-32, Chapter 37-32, Rescue 1. Chapter 37-32, Rescue 1. Feng Wu could hear the boy crying, "Uncle, I really didn't push Xiaoshu into the river. He wanted to catch the fish himself, and Sister Sonia jumped in to save him. I don't know what happened." Then, they saw Feng Wu come ashore with the 2 children. The middle-aged man rushed over and snatched the 2 kids from Feng Wu's arms. "Xiaoshu! Xiaoshu! Sonia! Sonia!" No matter how loudly he shouted, the 2 children didn't move and kept their eyes shut. The man almost pushed Feng Wu to the ground, but judging by how nervous he was probably their father. Feng Wu dried her clothes with her spiritual essence. When she looked up again, she saw that the middle-aged man was wiping away his tears. Next to him, a few others were all weeping and trying to comfort him. "Condolences." Feng Wu walked up to them and frowned. "They're not dead yet." Immediately, all eyes were on Feng Wu. Only then did Feng Wu notice their shabby clothes. They looked no better than beggars. "But that wasn't the point," she said. "They're not dead yet. Why condolences?" The middle-aged man was speechless. A younger man glanced at Feng Wu and said, "Who are you? What are you talking about? They're dead." The father pulled the young man away. "Calm down. She's the one who fished Xiaoshu and Sonia out of the river." Everyone saw that, so the younger man didn't say anything else, but he still gave Feng Wu a stern look. Wiping away his tears, the father bowed at Feng Wu. "Miss, thank you for what you did." Feng Wu saw him bend down, and his tears fell into the mud. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She knew what was the most important thing to this father. Feng Wu didn't want to take action at first, for doing so would only delay her. Moreover, if she used her spiritual essence to save the kids, the silver-masked man might be able to track her. Little Phoenix had been urging Feng Wu to leave, but Feng Wu couldn't bring herself to do it. For a father to lose 2 children in one day, Feng Wu shook her head and told the man, "I can save them." The others looked at one another in bewilderment, before giving Feng Wu strange looks. Save them? But the 2 kids had stopped breathing. The boy was in a worse condition, so Feng Wu decided to save him first. Feng Wu didn't have any medicine left. She didn't have any venom left, because she had used it all on the black-robed man. Therefore, all she could use now was the supreme-level essence of the plant. Feng Wu opened her right hand, and a streak of green light flowed out of her fingertips. It then jumped onto the little book, lingered on him, and slowly seeped into his body. Feng Wu knew that these people were all ordinary people with no spiritual essence, and couldn't understand her moves, so she didn't try to avoid them. Meanwhile, Everyone was looking at Feng Wu in amazement. No acupuncture and no medicine. Did she think she could bring back the dead by opening her palm? Who was she kidding? The younger man snorted. Meanwhile, the others frowned as well. That was so preposterous. Chapter 37-33. Chapter 37-33. Rescue 2. Chapter 37-33. Rescue 2. No one believed that Feng Wu could save the kids, so they all frowned. Feng Wu injected the essence into the xiaoshu, and after a short while, she couldn't inject anymore. The rest of the essence jumped onto Sanya. It slowly disappeared into her mouth and nose. What did you do to them? The younger man stared at Feng Wu. You're not allowed to. However, before he could finish, he saw Xiaoshu, who had closed his eyes and wasn't breathing or having a heartbeat, moving his eyes a little. The father had been watching Xiaoshu the whole time, so he reacted quickly. He grabbed Xiaoshu and was so excited. Xiaoshu, you're awake. Xiaoshu, Xiaoshu. The boy opened his eyes and looked at his father in bewilderment. Tears welled up in the father's eyes as he held the boy in his arms. My son. His brother stared at Feng Wu in astonishment, as if he had seen a ghost. You. How could you? How did you do it? They had seen with their own eyes that Xiaoshu was no longer breathing. Feng Wu glanced at the children's uncle, but didn't say anything. Recalling his attitude toward the girl, the uncle blushed. He looked at Sanya and sighed inwardly. Xiaoshu was alive, but Sanya? Well, at least one of them was still alive. Before he could finish sighing, Sanya opened her eyes. Arg! The uncle had been staring at Sanya the whole time, and he jumped when he saw this. You! The uncle pointed at Sanya in astonishment. Rubbing her eyes, Sanya looked at her uncle in bewilderment, but she soon realized what was going on. Uncle, help me save Xiaoshu. Quickly! After that, she dragged her uncle toward the river. Sister! Xiaoshu jumped out of his father's arms and threw himself at Sanya. Seeing Xiaoshu, Sanya was dumbfounded. Am I seeing things? Her uncle chuckled. Of course not. Look at Xiaoshu. He's so loud. Listen. Sanya didn't listen carefully. Instead, she grabbed Xiaoshu and smacked him on the butt. I told you not to go into the river. Why wouldn't you listen? Sister. Sister. That hurts. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I'm sorry. Despite the pain, the boy still wrapped his arms around the girl's neck and burst into tears. Sanya couldn't bring herself to hit him anymore. She and her brother were so close to sinking together and never seeing their parents again. The siblings sobbed. The other men watched with tears in their eyes. Hey! The uncle nudged Feng Wu with his elbow. Feng Wu glanced at them. The young man smiled obsequiously. Sorry about what happened just then. I guessed I offended you. Feng Wu nodded. Yes, you did. What? Shouldn't she say it was all right? The uncle didn't know what to say. Feng Wu glanced at the crying siblings and turned to leave. Hey, don't go. The uncle tried to grab Feng Wu. Feng Wu dodged and frowned at him. All eyes were on Feng Wu and the young man. The father came back to himself. He went up to Feng Wu and knelt. Miss Gao, Mingjiang will be forever in your debt. Chapter 37-34. Chapter 37-34. Rescue 3. Chapter 37-34. Rescue 3. Feng Wu shook her head. Don't worry about it. She went on walking after that. She had to leave as soon as possible. Otherwise, if the silver-masked man found her, he might kill all those people. Feng Wu put a hand on her chest. Just then, her internal injury acted up. Yes, she had been suffering from internal injuries. The black-robed man's strike had severely injured her. In order to trick the black-robed man, she had concocted all her medicine into poison to kill him. Hence, she didn't have any left. Feng Wu shook her head with a wry smile and quickly walked away. Miss! Gao Mingjiang wanted to catch up with Feng Wu, but she was too fast for him to catch up with. He could only watch her leave. Brother, who's that girl? He looks so arrogant. The uncle frowned and didn't like Feng Wu's attitude. Gao Mingjiang threw a dirty look at his brother. She's my savior. Show some respect. His brother waved his hand impatiently. Fine, fine. I'm not disrespecting her. but her attitude is a little too aloof. Gao Mingjiang said, she has her own plan. We won't be able to guess it. Holding her brother's hand, the teenage girl stared in the direction Feng Wu had left in. Feng Wu turned a corner and coughed loudly. She coughed so hard that she thought she was going to cough her lungs out. Little Phoenix jumped. Are you all right? Are you all right? Feng Wu waved it off. I can still hold on. Let's go. Little Phoenix said, I'll carry you. Feng Wu glanced at it. You've been hit by that man yourself. You can't carry me now. Let's go. Little Phoenix nodded reluctantly. Wait. Standing by the side of the road, Feng Wu found the scene rather strange. Why did everyone look like they were running away? Their clothes were all tattered and dirty, and their faces were covered with dirt. It was so muddy that she couldn't see their faces. They panicked and headed north in a hurry. Some carriages were galloping past, but most of them were ordinary civilians. Some came in 2s and 3s, some came in 1 or 2s, and some came in whole processions. Feng Wu and Little Phoenix looked at each other. Something was going on here. Feng Wu then recalled the family of the children she had saved earlier. They looked like a big family as well. Feng Wu asked Little Phoenix, Where are we? Little Phoenix said, We're in northern Yin now. Feng Wu asked, Already? Little Phoenix nodded matter-of-factly. That's right. Didn't I tell you to choose a path in the tomb? One led to northern Yin, and the other to the Jummu Empire. Since you chose the shortcut, we came out in northern Yin. Feng Wu asked, Where are we in northern Yin then? Little Phoenix gestured at Feng Wu to take the map. Feng Wu had a map of northern Yin in her chest pocket, which she had prepared beforehand. Little Phoenix pointed at the center and told Feng Wu, We're right here. Feng Wu said, It's not that far from the royal palace. Little Phoenix nodded. 1,500 kilometers. With your original capability, it won't take you long to cover that distance, but now, Feng Wu hadn't fully recovered yet. With her current cultivation level, it would take her a while to run 1,500 kilometers. Chapter 37-35. Chapter 37-35. Refuge 1. Chapter 37-35. Refuge 1. Feng Wu saw a lot of people on the road, and some of them didn't seem to be doing well. She tried to ask a few people about the situation, but they weren't in the mood to talk, and their eyes were numb. All they told Feng Wu was that the war in southern Yin was coming, and the soldiers at the front wouldn't be able to hold their ground. Therefore, they were running as fast as they could toward the imperial capital. Feng Wu was surprised. Southern Yin? Was it at war with northern Yin? When was that? Why didn't she know anything about it? But these people didn't know much either. They left in a hurry. Feng Wu put a hand on her chest again. Your wounds are too severe. You need to find a place to treat them. Little Phoenix had never looked so serious. Feng Wu waved her hand, but blood rushed out of her throat, and she almost couldn't hold it down. You have to treat your wounds now, or you're going to die. Little Phoenix coughed and spat out a mouthful of black blood. Feng Wu asked, Are you that badly injured? Little Phoenix rolled its eyes at her. We were hit by that man together, and I'm more capable than you. I'm already in this state, which shows how badly you've been injured. You're lucky to be able to walk out of the tomb alive. Feng Wu only gave it a wry smile. Little Phoenix was right. She needed to treat her wounds now. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to make it to northern Yin. Just then, Feng Wu saw a checkpoint up ahead. A row of wooden fences blocked the road, and two people sat at tables by the side. Behind them were soldiers covered in heavy armor. The two people sitting on the chairs were obviously capable cultivators. Right now, they were staring coldly at the person standing in front of them. Men went through soon enough, but for the women, especially the teenage ones, the two cultivators kept a very close watch on them. Were they doing it on purpose? No, Feng Wu shook her head inwardly. She didn't see any lewd look in their eyes. That was to say, they were on official business. What kind of official business would make them so alarmed by teenage girls? Feng Wu suddenly felt alarmed. Little Phoenix frowned. Something doesn't feel right. I'll go have a look. After that, Little Phoenix quietly flew toward them. Feng Wu thought that it would be a while before Little Phoenix came back, but as it turned out, the bird came back in a split second and hid itself in Feng Wu's arms. Little Phoenix buried its head and talked to Feng Wu in its head. "Let's get out of here." Feng Wu stood at the back of the line. There were at least a few hundred people in front of her, so the people at the checkpoint didn't notice her. Feng Wu trusted Little Phoenix and knew that something dangerous was happening. That was why it was behaving this way. While no one was looking, Feng Wu quickly backed away. She turned a corner and started running. She didn't use any spiritual essence the whole time, for if there was any fluctuation, the two junior spiritual overlords would notice her. Right now, two junior spiritual overlords were enough to kill her. Feng Wu spotted a valley and quickly headed for it. The woods were dense, and no one would notice her once she hid inside. Feng Wu asked Little Phoenix in a low voice when they were in a secret corner. "What happened? What did you find?" "Something's wrong." Little Phoenix didn't want to be spotted either, so it lowered its voice. "They're looking for you. You're a wanted person." Chapter 3736, Chapter 3736, Refuge 2. Chapter 3736, Refuge 2. Feng Wu looked at Little Phoenix in surprise. "I'm a wanted person?" Little Phoenix nodded solemnly. Feng Wu said, "That's impossible. I don't have any dealings with the Yen Kingdom. Why would they?" Little Phoenix shook its head. "I don't know. I can ask around later. But I'm sure that they're indeed looking for you now." Feng Wu had to accept the truth and smiled bitterly. "I guess I'll have to find another way." However, Little Phoenix shook its head again. "There's no point changing the route. They've set up obstacles and people at all the checkpoints of Northern Yen. Plus, they also have your portrait." After a pause, Little Phoenix had to remind Feng Wu. "The portrait looks a lot like you." Feng Wu rubbed her chin. "Why is Northern Yen so hostile toward me? They even sent two spiritual overlords. They won't be easy to handle." Little Phoenix wouldn't give in. "When you're strong enough, you can easily defeat a junior spiritual overlord." Feng Wu mumbled. "I don't know when I'll be able to fully recover. If that's the case now, things will only get harder. Is this what Master Ling Hu meant by wandering in the mortal world?" Little Phoenix didn't get it. "What did you say?" Feng Wu cleared her throat. "Can we go back to the path that led to the Junwu Empire? Aren't you afraid of running into the silver-masked man?" Little Phoenix rolled its eyes at Feng Wu. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Little Phoenix frowned. "I heard them talking just then. The one on the left told the one on the right that Princess Rao had given a death order. She wanted to see you in person, dead or alive. Yes, she was talking about you." Feng Wu said, "Princess Rao? I've never heard her name before." Little Phoenix shrugged. "I don't know what you did to offend her, but she wants you dead now. And you can't go back even if you want to, because she has sent a lot of people to search for you in this vast land." Feng Wu was astonished. They had just escaped the silver-masked man, and the danger wasn't over yet. Who was this Princess Rao? Little Phoenix frowned. "I heard from those two that Princess Rao is close to a family of the Junwu Empire. Maybe it's a family you've offended." Feng Wu said, "I've offended the Zhua and Hua families the most. Could it be one of them?" Little Phoenix nodded. "It's possible. By the sound of it, Princess Rao is very influential in Northern Yen. She's the second in line to inherit the throne, and Prince Min is the first." Little Phoenix glanced at Feng Wu. "I'm impressed. You've offended their second in line to the throne, before even meeting her." Feng Wu rubbed her forehead with a wry smile. She really had no idea. Feng Wu coughed violently. Despite its displeased tone, Little Phoenix was heartbroken to see Feng Wu like this. "There's a cave over there. Go inside and get some rest. I'll go ask around. I'll tell you when I'm done." Little Phoenix flew around the woods and knew where to find a safe place to live. Feng Wu pulled the plant away and saw a small cave. The cave was 10 m long and 2 m wide. It wasn't spacious, but it was big enough to fit Feng Wu inside. It took Feng Wu a lot of effort to get in, and she felt another pain in her chest. Chapter 3737, Chapter 3737, Recover 1. Chapter 3737, Recover 1. It took Fengwu a lot of effort to walk in. She felt another pain in her chest, and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Fengwu found a spot by the wall and sat down. Meanwhile, Little Phoenix had gone out to gather information. Fengwu recalled what Little Phoenix said earlier. Princess Ra wanted to catch her. Leaning against the wall, Fengwu sighed in resignation. She put on a disguise and found some shabby clothes, which made her look like a beggar. As for that face, it belonged to the ugly girl she had disguised herself as. Jun Linyuan, Feng Sun, and Yu Minji could all recognize her. It took Fengwu a lot of effort to disguise herself. She rested for 5 minutes, then sat down cross-legged, and began to spread her spiritual essence throughout her body, repairing her blocked energy channels. After some time, Fengwu heard the sound of rain. But Fengwu was too absorbed in her cultivation to be disturbed by the rain. After an unknown period of time, Fengwu heard rustling sounds, which went on and on. In such an environment, it would be very difficult for Fengwu to repair her body, for she was constantly disturbed by the noise. There were men and women of all ages. It was like a village, and they couldn't control their voices at all. Fengwu opened her eyes in resignation. She was shocked when she saw what was going on. There were so many people. The cave was only big enough to fit a dozen people, but it was packed. Fengwu estimated that there were at least 30 of them. When Fengwu opened her eyes, an old lady saw her, and she cried out, "Ah!" Immediately all eyes were on them. A girl ran up to the old lady and pointed at Fengwu. "You're not dead." Fengwu said, "Have you ever seen a dead person leaning against the wall?" Those people were speechless. Just then, a man came up to them, bowed at Fengwu, and said apologetically, "Miss, sorry to bother you, but you did find this cave first. It's indeed yours." "But," the man gave her a wry smile, "it's raining heavily outside and it's late at night. We can't travel, so we'll have to stay here for the night. Please forgive us." Fengwu gave the man a strange look. It was a familiar face. Fengwu had saved a girl and a boy before, and one of the men was their father. She was looking right at him. His name was Gao Mingjiang. Just then, a teenage girl arrived with a 4-year-old boy and looked curiously at Fengwu. That was right. It was indeed Sonia and Xiaoshu, the 2 children Fengwu had saved. Ahem! Blood rushed to Fengwu's chest, and she coughed violently. Her cultivation had been interrupted, and she had only recovered a little. Fengwu spat out a mouthful of blood. The old lady's face darkened when she saw the blood. She stepped back, tugged at Gao Mingjiang's sleeve, and pulled him to the side. Fengwu heard the old lady clearly. Chapter 3738, Chapter 3738, Recover 2. Chapter 3738, Recover 2. Fengwu heard the old lady clearly. She could hear the old lady's words clearly. "Is this girl a beggar? She looks sick. I'm afraid she won't live for long. And look at her. Doesn't she look like she's been infected with the plague?" The old lady moved further away from Fengwu. "The plague?" Fengwu was speechless. Gao Mingjiang looked at Fengwu and then at old Madame Gao. He said seriously, "Mother, she doesn't have a high fever." The old lady was still worried. "She doesn't have a high fever, but she vomited blood." Gao Mingjiang still shook his head. The old lady's tone became stern. "Hurry up and let her go." Gao Mingjiang looked at the pouring rain outside and shook his head awkwardly. "Mother, in terms of first come, first served, she came first." The old lady said, "I don't care. Anyway, there are many people on our side." Gao Mingjiang was speechless. The old lady stared at Gao Mingjiang solemnly. "If you can't do it, I'll get your brother to chase her away." "Mother." Gao Mingjiang frowned. The old lady glared at Gao Mingjiang, her finger almost poking Gao Mingjiang's face. "I don't understand it. Are you disobeying your old mother because of an outsider?" Gao Mingjiang frowned and didn't say anything. The old lady said, "It's not like you. What's going on today?" Gao Mingjiang looked at the old lady and let out a long sigh. Mother, Xiaoshu and Sonia almost lost their lives today. I'm thinking that good and evil will be rewarded. We can't bully her like that just because we have more people. Feng Wu couldn't help but give Gao Mingjiang another look. He was an interesting man. Fortunately, she had disguised herself as an ugly girl. Otherwise, with how pretty she was, the old lady might want to sell her off. The old lady glared at Gao Mingjiang. So you're not going to do as I say, are you? Gao Mingjiang stood between Feng Wu and the old lady, and shook his head seriously. The old lady was infuriated. She glared at Gao Mingjiang and stormed off, probably looking for another way to get what she wanted. Gao Mingjiang turned around, and saw Feng Wu leaning against the wall panting. He looked apologetic. Miss, what's your name? She thought for a moment, then said, You can call me Feng. Gao Mingjiang nodded. Miss Feng, you should rest first. You were the one who found this place first. We can't possibly do such a thing. I'll get you something to eat. Gao Mingjiang nodded at her and left. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. She looked at the people in the cave in confusion. Because there were a lot of people, the cave was packed. She was surprised to find that they were all carrying blankets and sleeping bags with them. It looked like they were refugees of some kind. After a while, a young woman in her 20s walked up to Feng Wu. Her face looked gentle, and her voice was soft. She sat down next to Feng Wu, and took out 2 pancakes and a bamboo tube. She smiled and said, Miss, the pancakes are soft. Chapter 37:39. Eat them while they're hot. Chapter 37:39. Found that the woman looked a little like Sonia. Chapter 37:39. She went on introducing herself, saying that she was Gao Mingjiang's wife before she could say anything. She had been chased by 2 powerful spiritual overlords. And it was only now that she had a chance to eat something hot. Eat it while it's still hot. It's hard to reheat. And if you don't eat it now, it'll harden again. It'll be such a hassle when it becomes as hard as rock. Feng Wu nodded at her, then started eating the pancake. She was really hungry, so she ate very fast. Before she knew it, she had finished 2 pancakes and emptied the bamboo tube. Only then did she realize how hungry she was after all the injuries she had suffered during the escape. How embarrassing. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. Just then, Feng Wu heard a lot of whispering. There were men and women. The little beggar doesn't look like she's been infected by the plague. People who are infected don't eat that way. I think she can eat a cow. It's a pancake made from fine flour, so of course it's delicious. I can swallow a pancake as big as a cow. Mingjiang's wife is so generous. Where did she get those pancakes? We only ate porridge with grass in it. That's right. Why wouldn't she care about her family? Why did she give anything to us? Even if there's not enough for the adults, she can always give some to the kids. Each of them can at least have a taste of the pancake. With all the noise, Feng Wu could see that Mrs. Gao didn't look too happy. What made her even more speechless was that they were bickering over 2 plain pancakes. Was this world still the same as the one she knew? Mrs. Gao turned to the others and said coldly, The pancakes didn't come from the family kitchen. My mother's family risked their lives to send them here. They're for Xiaoshu and Sonia. There are only so many of them, so what's wrong with me giving them to this girl? As you all know, Sonia and Xiaoshu almost drowned today, but their savior left after saving them, and my family didn't have a chance to thank her. I just happened to run into this girl, and I want to save her life. I'll consider it as repayment for my savior. Can't I do that? If you really want to eat pancakes, ask your own family to send some. Mrs. Go glanced at the others. Many turned away at her gaze, but by the looks of it, they were complaining inwardly. Feng Wu was confused. What was going on in the Yin Kingdom? She was so confused that she asked Mrs. Gao. Mrs. Gao looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Don't you know? Feng Wu smiled bitterly. She could only make up stories about how she had been ill in the cave these days, and had no idea what was going on outside. You've been ill for a long time. Mrs. Gao gave Feng Wu a sympathetic look and smiled wryly. The Yin Kingdom is in chaos because of the war and the plague. Feng Wu asked, War and plague? Mrs. Gao nodded solemnly. I don't know much about the war, and my husband can explain to you later. As for the plague, tears welled up in her eyes at the mention of the plague. She wasn't the only one. The others had tears in their eyes as well, and no one cared about the 2 pancakes anymore. They all went back to their work in silence. Chapter 3740. Chapter 3740. The Plague 1. Chapter 3740. The Plague 1. Feng Wu looked at Mrs. Gao. Yes. Mrs. Gao looked around and said to Feng Wu, "Everyone here is from the Gao family. You've met the old lady already. As for my father-in-law, he didn't survive the journey. The old lady has 5 sons, and my husband is her 4th son. These are our children." Mrs. Gao put her arms around Xiaoshu and Sanya. "Before he died, my father-in-law told us to run as fast as we could to the north, because a plague broke out in Maple Forest City of southern Yen, and it's spreading very fast. They've sent someone to shut down Maple Forest City. Everyone there is going to die. The infected were from Maple Forest City, and Gao Village was fine, but we were going to be burnt to death anyway. So the people of our village ran out in a hurry. We were in such a hurry, and didn't take many things with us. It was very inconvenient. It just so happens that it's been a drought for the past 6 months, and we're running out of food. There's been a famine in many places, and we can't get any food at all on our way north." Feng Wu frowned. "You should have some food stored up from last year, right?" Gao Mingjiang was standing behind his wife. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Even if there is, it's still in the hands of the officials. We can't buy it. But I heard that there's no war, no plague, and no drought in northern Yen, so we're heading there." Gao Mingjiang looked at Feng Wu. "Miss." Feng Wu made up an identity for herself, saying that her parents were dead, and she had to beg for a living. She then ate some unknown fruit, and had a stomachache. That was why she had been living in this cave. Feng Wu only said it in a casual tone, but Gao Mingjiang and his wife saw pity in each other's eyes. Even the woman, who had been very harsh before, softened her tone when she glanced at Feng Wu. "You had a harder time than us." Feng Wu smiled bitterly. She was being chased around, and of course she had a hard time. The Zhou family, the Hua family, the Dongseng kingdom, and Princess Rao of the Northern Yin kingdom. Seeing that Feng Wu was lost in her thoughts, that woman thought that she had hit the nail on the head, so she waved at Feng Wu. There, eat that pancake. I won't hold it against you." After that, she gave a wave of her hand, and lay down on the bed she made for herself. The cave was quite small, and each branch of the family formed a little group. Everyone was lying on the ground, and there wasn't even room to walk around. Mrs. Gao had taken care of Feng Wu well. She put Feng Wu on the spot closest to the inner circle, while she lay down next to Feng Wu, blocking the other people's gaze. Seeing that Feng Wu had been lost in her thoughts, Mrs. Gao patted her on the shoulder. "Don't worry. Go to bed. We still have to travel tomorrow." Feng Wu knew that she was talking about the Gao family. They were short of clothes, food, water, and everything else. They had to get to northern Yen as soon as possible to survive. Feng Wu nodded, closed her eyes, and went into deep thought. With her disguise skills, she could enter northern Yen on her own, but it would be much more risky. It was mainly because of the silver-masked man. The Dongseng kingdom was very good at hunting people. Somehow they seemed to be able to get to her. Chapter 3741. Chapter 3741. The Plague 2. Chapter 3741. The Plague 2. The Dongseng kingdom was very good at hunting people. Somehow, they seemed to be able to get to her. Therefore, it would be much more dangerous if she was on her own. Could she go back to the Junwu Empire instead of going to northern Yen? Feng Wu rubbed little Phoenix, who had flown back to her, and was lying in her arms. According to little Phoenix, it had indeed sensed the masters of the Zhou family and the Hua family searching for her. Moreover, they were hiding in the crowd. As for Jun Linyuan, little Phoenix said regrettably that it didn't sense Jun Linyuan's energy. Feng Wu could only sigh. She had no choice but to go to northern Yen now. Moreover, with what Master Linghu had said, She had to finish the journey within 3 months. More than half of the time had passed. After some thought, Feng Wu decided that she should be able to hide from her pursuers if she stayed with the family and hid her spiritual essence. At that thought, Feng Wu put a hand over her dantian. She had to seal up the little bit of cultivation she had recovered. Are you really going with them? Little Phoenix's voice rang out in her head. Feng Wu nodded. Yes. Little Phoenix grew anxious. But they're defenseless. They're just ordinary farmers. How are they supposed to protect you? Feng Wu smiled and replied to Little Phoenix in her head. These defenseless people are the ones that can protect me now. Little Phoenix wanted to say something, but Feng Wu waved it off. Don't worry. Everything will be fine. Feng Wu couldn't sleep at all among all the snoring. Mrs. Gao and the others woke up early the next morning. Gao Mingjiang was obviously the leader of the team. He divided each branch into a team. Some were collecting firewood, some were cooking, and some were digging plants. Mrs. Gao was given the job of cooking. Feng Wu saw that she was making pancakes on the stove. This time, it wasn't flour pancakes, but corn flour and some miscellaneous grains. Feng Wu frowned when she saw the chaff. The texture seemed so rough. How was she going to eat that? Mrs. Gao couldn't help but smile when she saw Feng Wu. By the way, Mississippi Feng, go wash your face. Feng Wu didn't want to wash her face, for it would be easier to hide her identity with all the dirt. Moreover, dirt little beggars were a common scene. Feng Wu gave her a wry smile. My face is bruised. It'll be better if I put some ash on it. It won't work once I wash it off. Mrs. Gao gave Feng Wu a sympathetic look and said, You're sick. Sit down and take a break. The coarse chaff pancakes will be ready soon. They smell nice. They were indeed coarse chaff pancakes. Feng Wu saw that more than half of them were coarse chaff. But there was very little corn flour. As for the smell, Feng Wu smiled bitterly. She really couldn't bring herself to eat them. Feng Wu looked around then at Mrs. Gao. Mrs. Gao was smart enough to know that Feng Wu wanted to say something. She smiled. It's still early, and there's firewood in the mountains, so I'll make some more coarse chaff pancakes. When we're in a hurry, we don't have to cook anymore. The pancakes can be washed down with cold water, and it'll be quite filling. Feng Wu smiled bitterly. Coarse chaff pancakes and cold water. That was hardly edible. Chapter 37:42. However, for the sake of her plan, Feng Wu had no choice but to Fugitive 1, Mrs. Chapter 37:42. Where are you going? Fugitive 1. However, for the sake of her plan, Feng Wu had no choice but to ask, Mrs. Gao, where are you going? Lady Gu smiled bitterly. All we want is to get to the northern Yin kingdom. Once we're there, we can stay anywhere. We just want to live. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Can I come with you? Before Mrs. Gao could say anything, the third son's wife, who had come back with some firewood, threw a dirty look at Feng Wu. No. Concerned that Feng Wu would be upset, Mrs. Gao smiled bitterly. Actually, her sister-in-law rolled her eyes at her. Don't be so nice. You can't pick up a beggar by the side of the road. We'll have one more mouth to feed. Seeing that Mrs. Gao still wanted to say something, the sister-in-law smirked. I'll tell my mother. Just wait and see. After that, she threw away her firewood and headed for the slope. Old Mrs. Gao was on the mountain slope with the kids looking for edible plants. According to her, if they mixed some leaves into the porridge, they would be able to survive for another meal. Mom! Mom! Her third daughter-in-law shouted as she ran. Hearing her sister-in-law's exasperated tone, Mrs. Gao was angry. She turned to Feng Wu and sighed. Miss Feng, I don't think my mother will agree. Feng Wu already knew what was going to happen. She nodded at Mrs. Gao then quickly walked away. By then Mrs. Gao's sister-in-law had dragged old Mrs. Gao to her side. Mom, my dear sister-in-law has agreed to take that little beggar with us. I can't believe it. Old Mrs. Gao was still holding a handful of leaves. Hearing that, she stared at Mrs. Gao and questioned her. Is that true? Did you really agree to take that little beggar with us? Mrs. Gao, who went by the name Li, wished she could bring Feng Wu along. She turned to the old lady. Mom, Miss Feng is so tiny. She can't eat much food. However, the old lady reacted violently. Go to hell. The old lady threw all the leaves at Mrs. Gao's face, but it still didn't appease her. I'm still the head of this family. You're just a daughter-in-law. How dare you bring a little beggar with you? There are so many beggars along the way. Can you help them all? I'm the one who feeds you. You'll starve to death if I don't give you anything to eat. And you're trying to take other people with you? You're not the only kind person here. But now isn't the time to be kind. I don't care what reason you have. Get her out of my sight now. If she doesn't leave, you're leaving with her. Mom. Frightened, Xiaoshu and Sonia wrapped their arms around the old lady's legs, fearing that she would hit their mother again. Li blushed at the old lady's words. Many people were watching, and most of them were her brothers-in-law, sisters-in-law and their children. Li was so embarrassed that she wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. Gao Mingjiang walked up to his wife, wrapped her in his arms, and frowned at his mother. Mother, you've crossed the line. Seeing that her son had turned against her old Mrs. Gao was furious. Chapter 3743. Chapter 3743. Fugitive 2. Chapter 3743. Fugitive 2. Old Mrs. Gao pointed at her son. What did you say? What did you just say? Gao Mingjiang frowned. Mother, you've crossed the line. We didn't have much food with us when we ran away. As for what we're eating now, it's all from me. He was telling the truth, and no one dared to contradict him. His other brothers and sisters-in-law had wanted to side with the old lady, but they felt rather guilty when they heard this. Old Mrs. Gao was shocked. Her son's words were like a slap on her face. Mingjiang, what's that supposed to mean? Gao Mingjiang looked at his mother and said seriously, Mother, if you hadn't made such a scene, I wouldn't have bothered, but if you really want to go there, we can split the food among the branches and go our own way. We don't have to stay together. I'll only protect my wife and children. Mother, if you want to come with us, that's fine. As for the others, it's none of my business. Everyone looked at Gao Mingjiang in astonishment. He was going to abandon his brothers. Mingjiang, what's that supposed to mean? Mingjiang, how could you do that to your brothers? Mingjiang. Everyone panicked a little. It was common knowledge that Gao Mingjiang was the head of the 30-member team. If it hadn't been for Gao Mingjiang, they would have been killed 100 times by now because he was the one who knew where to go and how to find food, water and avoid bandits. Because of that, they wouldn't let go of Gao Mingjiang. The second son of the Gao family tried to mediate the situation. Mingjiang, Mom didn't mean it. Don't be mad. Don't take it to heart. The third was also trying to persuade Gao Mingjiang. In the end, the eldest son showed up with a stern look on his face. He frowned at Gao Mingjiang. Mingjiang, don't bring that up again. Mom's still here. Are you trying to separate the family? That's enough. Gao Mingjiang smirked. Everything will be fine if you people have nothing to do with Xiaoshu and Sonia falling into the river yesterday. But if you do, of course, it has nothing to do with them. Old Mrs. Gao said hastily. Gao Mingjiang snorted and didn't say anything else. Just then, someone spotted Feng Wu and cried out. Feng Wu cleared her throat. Are you having a row? I'll come back later. The third son's wife turned around and smirked when she saw that it was Feng Wu. The quarrel would never have happened if it hadn't been for the girl. She stared at Feng Wu. Didn't you leave just then? Why are you back? Feng Wu pointed at the sack in her hand. I didn't leave. I just went to get something. Feng Wu could open up her ring space now. She didn't have any medicine or toxins left, but she had put a lot of supplies in it. She had only thought about keeping them there as a precaution, and they came in handy right now. Feng Wu found the worst sack and the worst rice and flour. When I was lying in the cave, I saw someone burying something in the mountain, so I went to dig it out. Chapter 3744. Chapter 3744. Fugitive 3. Chapter 3744. Fugitive 3. Feng Wu found an excuse for herself and went on. I'm going to Northern Yin with you. I can't leave empty-handed. I'm not a freeloader. The third son's wife smirked at Feng Wu. You little beggar. Are you saying that you're not a freeloader? She wasn't the only one sneering at Feng Wu. Food was scarce at the moment, and with the famine everywhere, every morsel of food was very expensive. No one would want to take this little beggar with them. Old Mrs. Gao glared at Feng Wu. We're not taking you. Just forget about it. However, the next second, Feng Wu picked up a corner of the sack and began to pour out the contents. It was flour. It was pure white flour. As a matter of fact, Feng Wu still had all kinds of good rice in her ring space. They were much more expensive than the flour, but she couldn't take them out now. The flour alone was eye-catching enough. Ah! Everyone cried out enviously when Feng Wu threw the flour onto the ground. White flour? Isn't that white flour? There's no coarse grain in it. How many pancakes can we make with it? I want egg noodles. I want a poached egg on the thick noodles. I want some dumplings. Everyone was drooling. Immediately, all eyes were on Feng Wu. Feng Wu asked the old lady, what do you think of this flour? Old Mrs. Gao was so excited that her legs trembled. Even in peaceful times, they still could only have dumplings on special occasions, and couldn't afford to eat them on a daily basis. This world belonged to the cultivation masters. Common folks like them could live happily for a whole year, just by eating some noodles. What? What did you say? The eldest son estimated that the flour had to weigh at least 50 kilograms. A lot of flour had been smeared with mud. The silly girl had poured the flour all over the ground. Old Mrs. Gao was so heartbroken. Feng Wu smiled at old Mrs. Gao. Well, I'm only saying that I can feed myself with flour. Can I join your team and go to Northern Yin? Yes, of course she could. When the old lady saw the flour, she knew that it was hers. Even if it wasn't, she had to make it happen. Ahem. Granny Gao put on a long face. Why do you want to team up with my family? Feng Wu smiled bitterly. I only have this bag of flour, but I don't have any company. There are so many people on the road. And I can't take all the food to Northern Yin all by myself. But you have a lot of people. It'll be safer for me to go with you. Old Mrs. Gao snorted. I see that you know what you're doing. Since you're so eager to join us, we'll have all the flour. Feng Wu was about to nod when Gao Mingjiang frowned. Wait. Old Mrs. Gao was about to jump into the flour pile when she heard what her son said. She was furious. Was he trying to sabotage her plan? Gao Mingjiang glanced at her and said, the flour has to be at least 50 kilograms. They used the same metric system here as in the Zhenhua Empire. Chapter 3745. Fugitive 4. Chapter 3745. Fugitive 4. Old Mrs. Gao shielded the flour and stared at Gao Mingjiang. What do you want? Gao Mingjiang said casually. Miss Feng is sick. I need to leave some for her. No. Old Mrs. Gao refused right away. Gao Mingjiang smirked. No. Mother, do you know how much this white flour is worth? How about I let her join another team? No. The old lady was exasperated. She threw a dirty look at Gao Mingjiang. This son of hers was taking the side of an outsider. She was so mad. Gao Mingjiang went up to them and filled an empty sack with 15 kilograms of flour. Old Mrs. Gao pressed a hand to her chest and cried out. That's enough. That's enough. Feng Wu wanted to tell them that she still had more, not to mention that she could buy food everywhere when they got to Northern Yin. However, Uncle Gao was doing her a favor, so she didn't say a word. Gao Mingjiang filled the bag with 25 kilograms of flour, put it in front of his wife, and said, make these into pancakes. They'll be Miss Feng's food. Gao Mingjiang was about to say something when the old lady rolled into the flour. Yes, she was lying inside, regardless of the fact that they needed to eat that food later. No. I can't let you take any more of it. If you do, I'll smash my head into this rock. You'll be killing your mother. Gao Mingjiang looked at old Mrs. Gao in resignation before turning to Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled. I'll use the rest as my payment for tagging along. What do you think? The old lady felt she was going to faint. Feng Wu was now much more pleasing to the eye than her heartless fourth son. Sure, sure. The old lady nodded repeatedly. Seeing all the flour, Li was elated as well. Without another word, she was already making the pancakes. As for old Mrs. Gao, with the help of her daughters-in-law, the old lady rose to her feet. However, she was covered by flour now. The old lady couldn't part herself from the food. When she opened her eyes, she saw her third daughter-in-law hiding flour in his sleeve. How dare you steal my flour? Go away. The old lady was exasperated. She picked up a stick and lashed it at her daughter-in-law, who immediately ran away. After chasing her daughter-in-law away, the old lady called after her other two daughters-in-law. What are you waiting for? Do you know how valuable these flour are? Put it in a bag. It was indeed very precious because one couldn't buy food with money now. The two wives immediately packed the flour for her. By the time they had filled most of the bag, there was only a thin layer of flour mixed with mud on the ground. The second daughter-in-law looked at the old lady. The old lady threw a dirty look at her. What are you looking at? Scrape the soil up and put it in the water. The flour will float, and the soil will settle down. How can you be so dumb? You didn't even think of that. The two daughters-in-law did as they were told. If the old lady hadn't said anything, they would have licked the flour clean as well. Chapter 3746. Feng Wu was helping Li with her cooking at the moment, and she was rendered speechless when she saw how much the old lady loved the flour. Fugitive 5. You can eat it when it's covered in dirt. Chuckled. It's worthwhile. You have no idea how precious so much food nowadays. She sighed at Feng Wu after that. It's just that I feel sorry for you when you had to give away so much nice flour. Li smiled bitterly. Both sides were making pancakes. Because of Gao Mingjiang's words, Li was making pancakes out of pure wheat flour, but not the old lady. Wheat flour was such a precious commodity that the old lady couldn't bring herself to make plain flour pancakes. She had mixed some corn flour, sorghum powder, and other coarse grains into the flour, and there was a big bowl of the mixture. They didn't have much time to rest and cook, because they had been moving as fast as they could. No one knew when the plague would arrive, or when the southern Yin kingdom would catch them. Li made 300 pancakes with about 30 kilograms of flour, and she was exhausted. However, her eyes lit up when she saw all the pancakes, for food meant they could live. Li put the pancakes into a sack once they cooled down, and handed the sack to Feng Wu. Feng Wu shook her head. I can't carry that much. Please keep it for me. I'll get it from you when I need to eat. Li also realized that Feng Wu was going to sit in their carriage, so she nodded and helped Feng Wu put the pancakes in the carriage. Feng Wu looked curiously at the three carriages. From their conversation, she could tell that they were all ordinary farmers. Having a cow was already supposed to be a big deal, but the Gao family had 3 carriages. Seeing that Feng Wu was perplexed, Li explained to her with a smile. My husband found them. Found them? Seeing that Feng Wu was confused, Li whispered in her ear and told her about their most dangerous journey. As it turned out, they ran into bandits a few days after they left the southern Yin kingdom. The bandits were attacking a large family, and many of them were killed or injured. Both sides were well matched in strength, and lost about the same number of people. In the end, the bandits killed the last member of the family, but they didn't have many men left either. Gao Mingjiang took the lead, killed the remaining bandits, and took the 3 carriages. As for the wealth of that family, it wasn't that they didn't want to take them, but that family had set their chests on fire before they died. But with these 3 carriages, we can travel much faster. It was supposed to take us 10 days to get here, but it only took us 3 to 4 days. Feng Wu asked, Are carriages only twice as fast? Li smiled bitterly. It would have been much faster, but there are so many of us here, and we can't fit all 30 people inside. The elderly and children can take the carriage, together with all the food we have. The carriages are packed to the brim. As for the adults, we still have to walk on foot. It was almost noon when a young man came to inform them that they were leaving in 15 minutes. Feng Wu recognized the man. Li told her, This is Gao Mingquan, My husband's fifth brother. Feng Wu nodded. Gao Mingquan looked at Feng Wu and found the little beggar familiar. He narrowed his eyes. Have we met before? Feng Wu's stomach lurched, and she said indifferently, Really? I don't think so. Li immediately said, Mingquan, you must be mistaken. Miss Feng has been sick in the cave this whole time. I don't think you've ever met her. Chapter 3747. Chapter 3747. Fugitive 6. Chapter 3747. Fugitive 6. Gao Mingquan didn't reply. He only left after giving Feng Wu one last look. Fearing that Feng Wu would be frightened, Li tried to calm her down. Don't be afraid. Mingquan is usually very kind. He's not that scary. He's just trying to intimidate you. Feng Wu realized that Li was the kindest person she had ever met. Patting her chest, Feng Wu coughed a little. Li smacked her forehead. How could I forget? You're still sick. Get in the carriage now. Feng Wu was indeed going to get into the carriage and have some rest. She didn't even dare to use her spiritual essence to repair her body, because she had a feeling that if she activated her spiritual essence, the Dongseng man with the silver mask would lock onto her. Feng Wu didn't know what kind of ability it was, but she had a hunch. Feng Wu was pushed into the carriage, and there was indeed a lot of stuff inside. There were coarse grain, dried rations, buckets, and some clothes. With Feng Wu inside, the carriage was almost full. Soon Xiaoshu and Sonya were brought in as well. Feng Wu moved back to make some room for them. Feng Wu sighed inwardly at the musty smell of the bedspread. She hoped that she could get away with it this time. Soon, they arrived at the checkpoint where Feng Wu had lined up the day before. The roads were still heavily guarded, and the atmosphere was very tense. Miss Feng, please come down. After taking the two children out, Li reached out to help Feng Wu. After lying down for a while, Feng Wu had recovered a little, and the pain in her chest wasn't as bad anymore. She feigned a confused tone. What's going? There was a long line ahead, and Feng Wu estimated that it was at least hundreds of meters long. Because of the meticulous inspection, the line didn't move forward for a while. Li whispered to Feng Wu, I heard from my husband that the Yuan territory is right ahead of us. It's off limits. Feng Wu had heard of the Yuan territory before. There was a no-man's land between the southern and northern Yan. The terrain was either tall mountains or dense forests. Neither side cared about it, and the land had remained deserted. Li was equally confused. Why is there an inspection? Are they stopping us from going to the other side? Feng Wu knew why they were stopped. Princess Rao wanted to catch her. Just then, Gao Mingjiang came back, and Li waved at him. Before Gao Mingjiang could reach Li, she asked anxiously, What happened? What happened? Gao Mingjiang smiled bitterly. I heard that they were looking for a wanted criminal, but they didn't tell me who the person was. Li frowned, looking concerned. Why is this happening? What do they want? Gao Mingjiang tried to appease her. Don't worry. It has nothing to do with us. We just have to be careful. By the way, Gao Mingjiang looked at Feng Wu in frustration. Miss Feng, do you have your travel permit and identification? Seeing that Feng Wu was dumbfounded, Li patted Gao Mingjiang on the shoulder. Miss Feng is a beggar now. How can she have a travel permit or proof of identity? Gao Mingjiang was speechless. Li suddenly clapped her hands. Fengya, the daughter of my sister, is 13 or 14 years old, and she's as slim as Miss Feng. How about we let her take Fengya's place? What do you think? Chapter 3748. Chapter 3748. Fugitive 7. Chapter 3748. Fugitive 7. Gao Mingjiang realized that this was the only way, so he gave Feng Wu an inquiring look. Feng Wu nodded. Gao Mingjiang went to tell the other members of the Gao family, so that they wouldn't make any mistakes if they were asked. Everyone knew who Fengya was. All they needed to do now was to treat Miss Feng as that girl. Gao Mingjiang stared at his third brother's wife. The woman had tried to do some damage because she resented Feng Wu for taking too much flour. Gao Mingjiang looked around before turning to his sister-in-law. If one of us makes a mistake, All 30 members of the Gao family will die. Everyone felt a chill run down their spine. Of course, if you don't want to do that, we can split up now, Gao Mingjiang said indifferently. We're going to stick together. I'll do whatever Mingjiang says. This family has to stay together. Miss Feng is Fengya. They have similar names. She's our Fengya. Granny Gao looked around and said coldly, if anyone dares to make a mistake now and incriminates everyone in the Gao family, I won't forgive them even if we're safe later. I'll feed them to the dogs. Everyone was scared, especially the wife of the third son. Both Gao Mingjiang and old Mrs. Gao was giving her threatening looks. She smiled obsequiously. Mother, you're right. Luckily, they were so far away from the others that other members of the family didn't hear them. After that, they went back to the line. It was their turn 4 hours later. Feng Wu noticed that the cliff was right ahead of them. The cliff was only wide enough for one carriage, and they had to go through it to get to northern Yen. The pursuers had chosen the right spot. The same 2 people sat there with stern faces and brooding eyes. They kept their gazes on each person in turn. Moreover, Feng Wu realized that they would summon the leader of each group. As expected, a soldier walked up to them and asked coldly, "Who's the leader here?" Everyone looked at Gao Mingjiang. Gao Mingjiang stepped out at that moment and smiled obsequiously at the soldier. As he spoke, he put a silver ingot into the soldier's sleeve. After weighing it in his hand, the soldier was satisfied with the size of the silver ingot, and his attitude improved a lot. "Follow me." The soldier led Gao Mingjiang to a remote corner, took something out of his chest pocket, and showed it to him. "Have you seen this person on your way here?" Gao Mingjiang's stomach lurched when he saw the portrait. He recognized the person in the painting. It was his savior. That was the girl who had saved Xiaoshu and Sanya from the river. She was wanted. It was obvious that the soldier wasn't just any ordinary man. He stared at Gao. "Mingjiang, you've met her before?" Luckily, Gao Mingjiang had seen enough of the world to be able to stay calm in a tense situation like this. "Of course I haven't." "Then why do you look stunned?" The soldier stared at Gao Mingjiang. Gao Mingjiang smiled bitterly. "She's so pretty that no one can resist her. Weren't you amazed the first time you saw her face?" Chapter 3749. Chapter 3749. Fugitive, 8. Chapter 3749. Fugitive 8. The soldier gave Gao Mingjiang a sidelong glance. But he didn't know what to say, because he had been astonished by the girl's beauty as well, when he had first laid eyes on her portrait. No man could resist her face. "You really didn't see her?" The soldier's face darkened. Gao Mingjiang smiled obsequiously. "She's too beautiful to be forgotten. I'm sure of it." The soldier didn't believe Gao Mingjiang. He asked around, and saw that everyone shook their heads in bewilderment. The soldier was secretly disappointed. Gao Mingjiang lowered his voice. "Who's in this portrait? Is she a criminal?" Of course, the soldier wouldn't tell him. He only snorted. "If you don't tell the truth, you'll all be decapitated." Everyone nodded obediently. The soldier snorted and left with the drawing. Feng Wu saw the portrait in the soldier's hand. Little Phoenix was right. They were indeed looking for her. But they didn't dare to do it openly, and were only asking around in secret. That was to say, Princess Rao and her brother might not be in the same boat. Feng Wu felt much better at that thought. Soon it was their turn. Everyone passed the checkpoint in order. Old Mrs. Gao went through first, followed by each branch of the family. Gao Mingjiang had already handed in the Gao family's household registration booklet, so everyone was waiting for their name to be called. "You're my niece. Don't worry." Li was a little scared, but she still tried to comfort Feng Wu. Feng Wu was touched. In fact, what she did could easily bring harm to the Gao family, especially Li. However, she had been so kind to her when they were total strangers. When the soldier reached the 4th branch of the family, he saw that there was an additional member next to Li. "Who is she?" The soldier frowned when he saw the sallow girl, whose clothes were in rags. Li tugged at Feng Wu, telling her to bow. She's my niece, and was living with us when the plague broke out. Because of the emergency, I took her with me when we escaped from Gao village in Maple Forest City. Gao Mingjiang went up to them as well. The soldiers had received Gao Mingjiang's silver before, so they didn't try to make things difficult for him. They nodded and were ready to let them pass. Everyone was about to heave a sigh of relief when they heard the sound of hooves. It was so loud that many people were attracted by it. 3 horses quickly arrived, led by a girl wearing a red cape. She was a pretty girl with an air of nobility about her. One look at her and everyone fell silent. Kneel! On your knees! With a whip in his hand, the soldiers lashed down at the people behind them. Feng Wu tugged at Li to dodge the whip. Otherwise she would have been hit for nothing. Li asked in a trembling voice, "Who's that?" Someone said, "What a grand entrance. Is she the princess?" Feng Wu glanced at the girl in the red cape, and shook her head inwardly. That didn't seem to be the case. But the others believed that conclusion. The 2 junior spiritual overlords on either side of the checkpoint turned to look at the girl in the red cape. Chapter 3750. Chapter 3750, Adventure 1. Chapter 3750 Adventure 1. The 2 junior spiritual overlords on either side of the checkpoint turned to look at the girl in the red cape. Miss Saixia. The spiritual overlord on the left nodded at her. Although he didn't get up, it was enough to show his respect. Saixia had no intention of dismounting. She glanced at the spiritual overlord and asked casually, "You still haven't found her?" "Not yet." The junior spiritual overlord shook his head. "Useless." Holding her whip, Saixia glared at the junior spiritual overlord. "Keep your eyes open. If you let that person go to the Northern Yin Kingdom, you'll know what the princess will do to you." After that, she rode off without looking at the others. She was here to warn these people. It was indeed very effective. Everyone held their breaths when she arrived, but after she left, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly either. Feng Wu thought to herself, "It seems that Princess Rao wants to stop me from entering the Northern Yin Kingdom and going to the capital. But why? What's her purpose? Would her appearance affect the princess's interests in some way? Or had Master Ling Hu known all along and sent her to the Northern Yin Palace on purpose?" Feng Wu was a little confused. However, she knew the time and place, so she decided to go. She wanted to see what was going on. "Go. Now." Seeing the look on the spiritual overlord's face, the soldiers knew that he had been humiliated by the princess's senior maid, and was in a foul mood. He reminded Gao Mingjiang in a low voice, "Just go." Gao Mingjiang took the hint right away. He cupped his hands at the soldier and said, "Thank you." He left with his wife and children after that, and Feng Wu followed him. Gao Mingquan was quick-witted as well, and jumped out like a fish. They didn't dare to take a carriage, and all walked as fast as they could. At that moment, they heard a loud noise behind them. They wanted to look over their shoulders, but Feng Wu whispered, "Run. It's dangerous." Hearing that, the others didn't dare to look back. They only had time to look over their shoulders when they reached the corner of the plankway. One look and their hearts raced. The spiritual overlord was furious after being humiliated by Miss Saixia, and everyone behind them was in trouble. The spiritual overlord was attacking the ordinary people like a madman. Thump, thump, thump. Hearing the 3 loud sounds, Feng Wu deduced that the spiritual overlord had made 3 strikes. He was a spiritual overlord. The people queuing up in front of him were defenseless commoners. How could they withstand 3 strikes from him? Hence, a large group of people fell to the ground. Many of them were beaten to a pulp. Oh God! They couldn't believe their eyes. Were they really all ants? Would they become cannon fodder as soon as a big shot lost his temper? Feng Wu sensed a cold gaze looking in her direction. It was obviously the furious junior spiritual overlord. She whispered, "Stop shouting. Let's go. Otherwise, that spiritual, the powerful man is going to kill us." The others were amazed at first, but they shuddered when their own lives were in danger. Chapter 3751. Chapter 3751. Adventure 2. Chapter 3751 Adventure 2. Let's go. Just like Feng Wu, Gao Mingjiang also sensed the man's bad mood, so he grabbed his wife and children and ran as fast as he could. The others trusted Gao Mingjiang the most. Seeing that he was running as fast as he could, they ran as well. The spiritual overlord snorted when he saw the family running away. Good for you. After venting his anger, the spiritual overlord went back to his cultivation with his eyes closed. Not only were they cultivating, but they were also sensing the spiritual essence of these people. Feng Wu should have been detected, but she had been ruthless to herself and destroyed her own cultivation ability. No one could detect it, because she was a cripple now. The Gao family rode for tens of kilometers before they stopped in a wide meadow to catch their breath. Oh my God! Old Mrs. Gao still hadn't calmed down. She smacked her thigh and cried, "Those people behind us are all dead. How can they do this to people like us?" No one answered her, because they were still in shock. In the end, Gao Mingjiang heaved a long sigh. Things have always been like this. You just didn't see it when you were in the village. Everyone fell silent. Gao Mingjiang didn't say anything either, for he was still thinking about the portrait, and he wondered what his savior had done. How should he repay her? Brother Mingjiang, I didn't know you still had any silver ingot left. Gao Mingkuan, who hadn't said anything, suddenly spoke. Only then did the others realize that Gao Mingjiang had given away a silver ingot. Old Mrs. Gao realized it as well. I have all our money. Where did you get the silver ingot? Did you stash it away? Gao Mingjiang frowned. His second eldest brother glanced at him. Mingjiang, I don't think that's a good idea. We're still living in the same room. Even if you earn some money of your own, you have to give it to mother. Why did you have it to yourself? None of your other brothers has done such things. Plus, our eldest brother is like a father to me. Even if we have used that kind of money, it has to be from him. Their eldest brother's face darkened. Old Mrs. Gao stared at Gao Minzian's. Explain herself. Was she going to interrogate him now? Gao Mingjiang almost lost his temper. Gao Mingkuan was so angry that he laughed. Mother brothers, what's that supposed to mean? If Brother Mingjiang hadn't reacted in time and handed that soldier some silver, that soldier would never have warned us. If he hadn't reminded us out of kindness, we would all have turned into a pulp by now. A silver inglo should be the last thing on your minds. His second eldest brother said. It's not like we won't let him give the silver away, but we never knew he had such a big chunk. Are we still his brothers or not? Feng Wu shook her head in resignation. These people just couldn't do it. Once they were a little safer, they would start fussing over the money. They were still too close to the checkpoint. If they made too much noise, the spiritual overlords would know. Therefore, Feng Wu had to step out. I lent the silver to Uncle Mingjiang. Feng Wu glanced at the old lady. Chapter 3752. Chapter 3752. Adventure 3. Chapter 3752. Adventure 3. There are 10 tales in total. Uncle Mingjiang said that he would pay it back himself. But since you're all one big family, why don't you pay it back together? After all, I've saved over 30 lives. Gao Mingjiang didn't expect Feng Wu to step out now, but she was a smart girl. Feng Wu and Gao Mingjiang looked at each other and knew what to do next. Gao Mingjiang heaved a long sigh. Little Feng, we've agreed that we'll keep it a secret. I'll pay you back when I earn some money. Why do you have to? Feng Wu waved him off. Uncle, I know we're good friends, but we still need to settle our accounts. It'll be a very long time before we get to Northern Yin alive and settle down. You'll then be able to earn some money. Maybe I'll starve to death by then. Isn't it your family's money? I don't understand. Why do you have to pay it back all by yourself? Feng Wu turned to old Mrs. Gao. Mrs. Gao, you heard me. That's what happened. Give it to me. Give you what? The old lady was a little flustered. Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment. 10 taels of silver. Aren't you the head of the Gao family? You said so yourself, and I heard it with my own ears. It's the right thing to do. Pay up. Old Mrs. Gao was furious. She was talking about 10 taels of silver, not 10 copper coins. If her third son hadn't brought it up on purpose, she wouldn't have. At that thought, she glared at her third son. Not only was the old lady staring at him, but his 2 older brothers were staring at him as well. The third son wanted to cry, but no tears would come. Mother, brothers, Gao Mingjiang said to old Mrs. Gao, Mother, that's what happened. I was worried about the burden on us, because we're poor. But since things have turned out this way, Mother, please give the money to Miss Feng. Over my dead body. I don't have any money. Holding her bag, old Mrs. Gao wouldn't pay up. Feng Wu rolled her eyes at the old lady. You'll have to pay me back sooner or later. She then went back to Gao Mingjiang's carriage. Gao Mingjiang gave his mother a resentful look. From now on, I won't be bothered to do such things. I'll only take care of my own family. That's it. After that, he went up to the carriage, patted the board and told the 2 kids, get in. Li had always been an obedient wife. She picked up Sonia first, then Xiaoshu. She then told Feng Wu, Miss Feng, please get in. Feng Wu nodded and climbed into the carriage. Gao Mingjiang and Li sat in the driver's seat. Old Mrs. Gao was exasperated. What's that supposed to mean? What are you doing? Gao Mingjiang ignored her and was going to start the carriage. His brothers panicked, as did their wives and children. They had been able to get here in one piece because of Gao Mingjiang. If he left without them then. At that moment, they heard wolves howling in the distance. The third son was almost in tears. He ran up to the horse and said to Gao Mingjiang, Mingjiang, Mom was only angry, and she didn't mean it. Please don't take it seriously. The second son nodded immediately. That's right,